And we are live. This is Dark Journalist. What a fantastic crowd here already tonight. Tonight's a very special show. It was unplanned, actually, because interestingly enough, we have a very special guest with us tonight, which is Walter Bosley, is the author. And, last night we just put out the video with Dr. Joseph Farrell about Wernher von Braun and the fake alien invasion card that he had warned us about. Now, von Braun's history, as outlined in that video, gives us some inclination that the payoff, the ultimate card that he was talking about, the alien invasion card, which was going to be a fake alien invasion that the global powers would use to kind of drum up from space this whole idea of weaponizing space and controlling Earth in a global control grid. Quite a scenario, but from somebody who was so deep inside that program. And that's what we're going to be covering tonight in this special report with Walter joining us. But right now joining us is the lovely Olivia.
Hi, everybody.
And it's kind of kicking into spring now, finally.
Finally.
It's been pretty like April showers into May and then more May showers.
It's been record breaking.
It's kind of amazing. It has. This has been the wettest spring in New England
for like 100 years.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable, and it's been kind of overcast. It's like we're living in London.
Yeah,
but not in the
or the Pacific Northwest.
Right, exactly. But today was really kind of fabulous right off the bat, and what's interesting is even though we had a show last night that we put out with with Dr. Farrell, and that we're going to come back with the Steganography series, episode 55 next Friday. This update is going to be very, very important and very key for a number of reasons, because there's so many news things that are breaking, especially in our circle, and things on the main stage of the whole kind of mainstream people like Bezos and Zuckerberg and all that politics. There's a weird kind of crisscross going on that is something I have not seen. And so we have to do this update because so many things happened last week that you could really genuinely say were just jaw-dropping. And they weren't really caught so much because so many things were going on the mainstream side. But on the independent side, locking into the mainstream side, they are just remarkable. And I made some side notes that Olivia was laughing at earlier. But they basically went something like this, which is Bezos on the moon, Corey on the lamb, DeLonge on the dole, and ICKE on the cult. And those four things, when we get deep into them tonight, are going to add up into this incredible week. If we really look at that week in review, it's phenomenal. And what it's setting up for what we're coming into with this whole the rest of May is quite charged, I believe. So we're in quite an interesting period here. And any astrologer would agree with me if a geopolitical observer didn't also.
I have to be quiet because my mic is too loud tonight.
Oh,
so
is it?
Yeah, I've been told I have to whisper and they can hear me typing.
Oh,
so I have to be.
Well, no, I'm going to lower your level right here.
Okay.
Fascinating. Here. Typing, huh?
They can even hear my typing.
No, you're good. I think you're good now. Now you're level. Let me hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, it's like quiet as a mouse.
Okay, all right.
That's hard for you.
I know it is.
This is someone who can really project their voice. This is, you've got all these actress skills in there that can just...
I don't need a mic if I'm on stage. I can project to
That's what they said about Al Jolson.
So right.
Those guys, before the real electric mics, they just go in the music hall and sing.
Are both of you, they said turn up the main host.
No.
Are you sure you're okay?
No, it's good. I'm already
okay.
Agree. Thank you, though. Thank you for all the feedback. I'll do a little tweak here, but...
Walter is in the chat.
Hey, Walter. It's great to hear you.
Okay, he's going to come back in a minute.
I did not expect him this early, so we're just fine on that. So we should be, hopefully now, we're all good with that. And so everyone joining us tonight, there is something special, I think, just about this combination of facts. And these factors, I think, are really going to get us off the ground as far as it goes. The first thing I want to start off with is this gentleman here, who we're all very familiar with. But this is Jeff Bezos. And you know what? He is going to the moon. Like it or not, that's where he's going. And what interests me about all this is his incredible fast push to do it. Now, we know that Amazon is working closely with the Bilderberg Group and with the CIA, and I don't say that lightly. They're both on-the-ground facts. Anyone can look that up. He's a regular attendant at Davos and Bilderberg, and those groups are known really for less than scrupulous plans when it comes to the future of humanity. But what I find particularly interesting in his case is that he's moving and he's consolidating with their help. So he's now consolidated Whole Foods, which is pretty major if you think about it. I mean, we don't have Mark Zuckerberg there yet. He's too busy creating his digital fascist machine over there. So he's doing a different type of track, which is the integration of the robotics and to grab the major kind of healthy food chain for supermarkets, I think is quite dramatic. So this is where Jeff has been going. And it's a very unusual background, as we know. Yes.
Well, I was going to say, Catherine Austin Fitts for years has been talking about the control of food, of agriculture.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what the GMO push was supposed to do. But in many ways, the alternative media thwarted Monsanto, as did a number of legal cases, because so many of their products cause cancer, you know, and they were trying to really create these genetically modified seeds and have farmers use them all over the world and then use that as a kind of new currency. So there were a lot of things going on in relation to that. But the idea now that Bezos wants to establish this base on the South Pole of the moon is quite interesting because he's been read in quite a bit. And when he was going through this kind of messy divorce action with his new mistress and stuff, the way that they were chopping away at him, I almost thought he was out of the picture. So obviously he got himself back into some good graces as one of the richest men in the world. Of course, this edition of Wired, even though this isn't an X episode, everyone will appreciate that his journey into space is often portrayed with the X steganography around him. And if you're going to get into space, you're going to have that X imagery with you. Of course, SpaceX carries it in the very name, and the owner of SpaceX owns X.com and has for quite a few years. But this project that Bezos is running here, which really is set to be the kind of major commercial competitor to SpaceX going out to the moon. And now they're trading all these barbs online, and some of the barbs are getting kind of R-rated at least, or at least PG-13. And it's quite interesting because we've also seen with our friend Elon Musk that he has been in the middle of this also. And he also has had his own setbacks, including when he made a few off-color statements on Joe Rogan's show, and instantly the company lost something like $4 billion. And for some other comments that he made earlier last year, where they removed him from one position but let him keep the major position. But still, they have him kind of boxed in, and they can, you know, they've kind of played out with both of these guys. Look, we can easily disgrace you in public, one, and two, we can easily show you who's boss, and by not letting you get there first. Now, this is the major thing. I'm going to read a little bit of this. This is from The Verge. And this is going to set up what we're talking about tonight, which is this whole thing that we talked about in last night's video, another extension of it. But it's the fake alien invasion meme that they've been inventing and pushing through the mainstream media. Suddenly, the media loves UFOs. I have to jump to this real quick because I'm just dying to do it. Now, that paragon of virtue, Senator Harry Reid, former Senate Majority Leader, who's all sort of pumping up with the TTSA, and suddenly he's just become this like kind of X-Files guy. You know, I kind of expect Harry Reid to show up next and be like, "The truth runs deep." You know, you're going to tune into Dark Journalist, and Harry Reid is going to be sitting in my chair, and they'll be like, "What? He was never here. It's me, Harry Reid. I'm here to give you UFO disclosure." You know it's coming. And they'll have like a Stepford Olivia there.
Oh dear God.
It'll be a little bit of Westworld. But what's happening is Heard on the Hill. Okay, this is a congressional report. Harry Reid pushing for more UFO research. wants a key senator to listen to stories from service members who claim sightings. Okay. So the man who guarded over the secrecy of Area 51 for 2 decades and who blocked the audit of the Federal Reserve, not once, not twice, but 13 times, okay, is not a person who's looking for transparency. So what's he up to? Well, this is a very important budget chart to look at. Let's get a quick look at it. But the U.S. now really taking the lion's share of military spending in the entire country. But that military budget, they want to keep expanding it and keep bloating it. And the CIA wants more money for their black projects. And then we have this dramatic issue of missing trillions. So how are you going to balance all these things out? How are these guys going to get more money? They're going to need a threat. They're going to need a kind of UFO 9/11. And of course, that opened up all the funds for the war on terror, you know, which is kind of a ridiculous phrase and always was, and got us into one of the most ridiculous wars of all time, the Iraq War. That was, you can thank the CIA for that in their summation that there were WMDs in Iraq, which there were not. Yes.
No, that's it.
Oh, good, good, good. Let's keep going with, now this is New York Magazine. Aliens might have sent cigar-shaped probe to monitor Earth, study finds. Let's take a quick look at this. Now, that's the Oumuamua, and you have these Harvard astronomers now starting, they've been taken off the leash. They're starting to muse along with these people. Hey, it was aliens. So this is quite a sea change that we've seen, and we know that To the Stars Academy and Tom DeLonge are a big kind of sideshow, corporate sideshow for this. And they can constantly refer back to them because they have so many CIA people at the helm that that's supposed to give it credibility when it comes to the mainstream media. When it comes to the independent media, that gives you the opposite of credibility. So you see how that works. So I'm going to remind everyone, you're watching the Dark Journalist Show. Tonight is a special report live stream on the fake alien invasion and the idea of a UFO imminent threat coming through the mainstream media, through major players like the New York Times, New York Magazine, The Atlantic. I mean, it's quite phenomenal. And it is across the board, which means the folks at the Council on Foreign Relations got that buzz. They got that phone call. They said, get these people talking about the UFO threat. And by the way, as often as you can, reference the CIA people and make them appear like they're giving people the truth. I mean, this is exactly how it's so easy to read. And we're going to get into how strange it is. Remember that one of the things that I started off with, the first thing we started with, was Bezos on the moon. Second was Corey on the Lamb. But the third one's really interesting, DeLonge and the DOLE. And remind me of the payoff on that one, because we're going to have a lot of fun with it. And then ICKE on the Cult is just icing on the cake. I want to remind everyone to go to darkjournalist.com to sign up for our newsletter. That's a free newsletter that keeps you posted on events that are coming up and the shows that we're going to have for you. Of course, the X-Steganography series will return next Friday. And later in the month, we're going to have Graham Hancock and Catherine Austin Fitts. So you're going to want to stay in the loop on that. So go to Dark Journalist and sign up for the newsletter. Of course, we're going to have a fantastic live event with Graham also. Okay, Miss Olivia, how are you doing out there?
Doing great. I'd like to remind everybody to ask questions in all caps, please, because it's easier for me to isolate. Excellent point.
Excellent point. So in the second part of the program, we're going to do Q&A, and when Walter joins us. And for all those questions, just ask them in caps. They're easier to go through. And trust me, Olivia is going to be selecting that and really working with everyone on it. Just terrific people out there tonight. So, you know, we've taken to calling the chat the ideas room because there's so many good people in there that the idea of just calling it chat is absurd. So, but let's keep rolling. I'll tell you what, Newsweek. Here's one that I really, this is a kind of headline that probably appeared in a Dark Journalist episode with Catherine Austin Fitts, I'd say about 3 years ago. And at the time, the mainstream media would have said, oh, you know, this is really one of those very, very crazy, far out fringe conspiracies, you know. But here we go. U.S. and UFO race with China, Russia. This is Newsweek. Former Senate Majority Leader Reid suggests. There he is again. The hero of disclosure, Senator Harry Reid. easily one of the dirtiest politicians ever to come down the pike. You understand when you have to run Nevada, where we have Las Vegas as the capital? Do you know what it takes to run Las Vegas as a politician? That's no ordinary politician. That's not like a senator from Boston. That is a very, very, very dicey situation. You're dealing with the mob. You're dealing with the secrecy at Area 51 and all the court cases that you have to bury. And on top of it, you're ringleading in the Senate for the Federal Reserve so that they don't get audited, because all that money and all the money that's flying out of those American banks to foreign banks that we can't get the names of from the Federal Reserve. These are all the things that Harry Reid was involved in, and many, many more. In fact, he had quite a few scandals coming up. So suddenly they've decided, in the mainstream media, Delonge looks basically too crazy. He's too much of like a burnt out rock star to make this happen. Let's figure out who else we can get. So they're kind of playing around with this Elizondo idea, but I don't think he's really selling it, honestly. Elizondo has a lot of issues as someone who works so closely with the CIA as a counterintelligence agent, which means you invent stories to fool the enemy. And if the enemy in this case is the public that wants to know about UFOs, then the embrace of these characters represents a clear danger. And if it's tied in to this story that von Braun told us about the alien invasion card that would get used, then we have to look at the question very, very seriously. It is, in fact, one of the most serious questions that I think we have running geopolitically right now. And all you're going to hear from these guys is, hey, we have a threat out there, and suddenly guys like Harry Reid really want you to give up some attention there, Congress, so we can get some money flowing, into these projects, because we promised these guys, the CIA, who are pumping up these public corporations for profit, that they get a big payoff. Let's get moving. All right, more Newsweek. UFOs invading military airspace. Invading. Are they invading? I mean, when you invade something, that's kind of like, that should be pretty obvious. I think if something was invading military airspace, we'd know about it. Multiple times per month. It's funny because across the board in 2014 and 2015, the stories were coming out, UFO sightings dropping. So where are they getting all these figures from? That's another one. That's right, they're invading. So it's an invasion. Okay, well, maybe von Braun was onto something there. And then in Newsweek, they say, but the public won't be told more. Well, that's because you, Newsweek, for the past 50 to 60 years, have been completely bashing the UFO topic and anyone who was interested in it, like John Mack. Remember that? Remember when Time magazine had John Mack on the cover and was calling him a fraud and everything else when he was a Harvard professor who wanted the truth? Well, now you guys seem like you want some kind of disclosure, because apparently the CIA and the Council on Foreign Relations say it's okay to talk about. But why? Why would this be? Why would they want the threat scenario? Remember, Louis Elizondo, who is the co-founder with Delonge of the To the Stars Academy, said a TIP, threat identification program. Everywhere he was talking about threats, it's a threat. They want you to buy into the threat, because the imminent UFO threat gives them the power, because then they're saying, we will protect you. This is the great game. But when it comes to UFOs, the stakes are very high, because if you've watched this program, especially the X-steganography shows that deal with the UFO file, you know very well that there's an X technology wrapped up inside of that UFO file. And so we're deep, deep into that. And they are trying to get their hands on it through this threat invasion scenario. So it gets very dicey. But back to Bezos for a minute, because I want to just go into this a little bit so we understand Bezos on the moon. Because Bezos with Amazon, Bezos with Whole Foods, Bezos with setting up the cloud for the CIA, Bezos at Bilderberg, Bezos at Davos, Bezos in robotics, all of that kind of makes sense. But Bezos on the moon or Bezos in space doesn't really make a whole heck of a lot of sense.
When you're ready, I've got a great question.
I'm always ready.
Okay. John Johnson wants to know, Could the deep state CIA schedule a plot against Trump together with an alien invasion?
Well, this is very interesting. If you look back to about the week before the election, you will find, of 2016, you'll find an episode that I did with Alexandra Bruce from Forbidden Knowledge TV, a great friend of ours. And there we discussed these documents that came forward that were leaked about the Clinton campaign. And it was, in fact, one of the main Clinton people that had put it together. About the potential idea when they were gaming out scenarios for what they would need to do for final advantage in that election, because they knew it was going to be tight. And one of them was a staged holographic UFO invasion in order to keep voters home, literally. Now, obviously, they never executed it, and who knows whose crazy idea that was. Nonetheless, the documents were never wholly debunked. They were quite unusual, actually, in the information that they had. Whoever put them together understood a lot about the Clinton campaign. But this piece of it, which was so dismissed at the time, because who would think, oh, you know, although Clinton was talking about UAPs when they rolled her out for every interview, pretty much, on Jimmy Kimmel. You know, I don't know who's watching that show. But it just so happens that we had these situations where she was kind of talking about UFOs and how we needed to get into Area 51, and et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I do think that the Clintons, along with the whole Rockefeller initiative from Lawrence Rockefeller in the 90s, indeed had some interest in getting their hands on this. And her campaign manager, John Podesta, no question about it. We all know that that's the case with him. So just a little tiny bit about Bezos going to the moon. Quote from The Verge: "This past week, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos laid out his vision for the future of humanity's presence in space. The richest man on the planet, on paper at least," good point, "spent about an hour talking about how and why he believes we should someday develop massive free-floating space structures that can house millions of people off-world." Okay, now again, off-world. We talk about off-world civilizations, and you know, when this comes up, so now they're mainstreaming this. Okay, good. And then he made the case for how his company, Blue Origin, this name is going to become very important, will build the infrastructure required to make these big dreams come true. This all starts with the rockets Blue Origin is building. Well, frankly, if they're talking about rockets, you know, they're kind of giving us the old sideways version of this, because they have much better stuff than rockets that can go into space. So this is kind of a joke, but we'll play along. And Blue Moon is what his company will use to someday deliver science equipment and humans to the surface of the moon. It can soft land about 6.5 metric tons on the lunar surface, and it's likely to be a key part of the company's desire to mine for water ice on the moon's poles. Water, again, very, very important. The GMO seeds, water. These are very interesting themes and concepts that they're coming together. And they have quite a difference with him and Elon Musk, who's more like, we got to get to Mars and all the rest of it. He has quite a keen focus. And I think that on the moon, and I think that what we're looking at with Bezos is particularly interesting because he's so close to the CIA that he's building their infrastructure. And in their case, when he bought the Washington Post, long time CIA newspaper, since Kaplan Graham in the 60s, 50s and 60s, what's signaling there is the amount of money that they paid him to build their cloud services, which is really hardcore information for the CIA to give up to anybody. That's almost the exact amount that he paid for the Washington Post when he bought it. So the exchange there, I think, is too close for comfort, and that is, in fact, CIA-controlled news. You know, mainstream media is corporate-controlled news. We know that anyway. But the CIA role, again, it comes up and down in terms of what we know about it. And any chance that we get to snapshot where that information is coming from and what the motivations of those people are. Remember that on the most fundamental level, the CIA is an extra-constitutional force. That is, it's not envisioned in the original Constitution, 1. 2, it was set up as an intelligence gathering unit, not as a covert action unit. So when they blurred those lines, the presidents tried to get that power back. And in fact, this was during that whole period of the development of the UFO file. And there were people involved in there like Vannevar Bush and John Trump, who was Trump's uncle. And we know that he was familiar with Tesla's work because we've done a series of reports on this. And the most popular one in the X series is Tesla, Trump, and the Time Capsule. Olivia, we had this, I didn't really finish the story with you, but no, it is. It's almost 400,000 views. But what I think is funny about that is I got an email and somebody said, one thing I think you may want to be aware of is that I think that Nixon, had this conversation with Trump, and I think that Nixon had a time capsule. I was like, oh, thanks for telling me. I appreciate it. Okay, I'll be sure to go ahead and tell Robert Merritt about that. We'll see what he thinks. But it was very, very, very interesting moment. Everyone, you're watching the Dark Journalist Show. We're going deep on Jeff Bezos, and this is not a kind of one of those 2 minutes hate things where we go out and hate on a political figure or a corporate figure, but it's to figure out what really the ruling structure and the leadership is going for. And through these individuals like Musk and through the individuals like Bezos, we start to get a feeling for where their program is heading now that they've taken so much out of the US Treasury, not Bezos personally, but that whole kind of system, and how the kind of corporate rule thing has hit a few snags. So it seems to me on one hand, they have this guy aiming at space and they have Zuckerberg trying to control the communications of people here on Earth. And I think they might have more, in the grand scheme of things, they might have more success with the space part because we don't understand space as well. But the communications thing and the fascist book burning type idea is not far from human memory now. That was happening in the 40s under Nazi Germany. And of course, it's happened in other regimes. Just check out Chairman Mao. He wasn't exactly a sweetheart. So I think when we look at these situations, there's an interesting thing about humanity. They may sort of give the leadership a lot of leeway, but they don't like certain things, certain types of mandates, certain types of fascist activity. And I think it sets off a primal thing unconsciously. And we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Okay.
Outstanding question.
Yes.
Marie Oliver.
Yes.
Will the whitewashed CIA be the face of a post-constitutional global AI technocracy?
Wow. Well, you really have it there. It could be. If it's not, if awareness doesn't stop, I mean, they have their tentacles into so many different areas. And if you're familiar with the work of somebody who has a great deal of influence on me is Professor Peter Dale Scott. And I've done a number of programs with Professor Scott and had a number of conversations with him. But his work on the deep state, coining the term for the English language, certainly it had been mentioned in Turkey in relation to the politics there. But he had coined deep politics, and he'd been working that 70s, 80s, 90s, and then he used the deep state as that extension of that for America. And his book, American Deep State, really lays it out. But we're talking about the CIA as one of the key components of a deep state. And I don't mean the kind of flimsy deep state that they kind of throw around on Fox News now, or that you see as a punchline on YouTube. I'm talking about the real hardcore information that Professor Scott brought forward. And, so many nested details with him getting to the facts. And he was just, with his work, he's just that kind of researcher. And he's still active, nearly 90 years old, as a retired professor over there at Berkeley. But he gave us that understanding that the deep state, what we see of it, is barely the tip of the iceberg. And that there's some much bigger, greater structure underneath. And we're just looking at that surface. So that's something to keep in mind. So we might have some idea there about how the CIA is related. But remember, the CIA was largely founded by two groups. Wall Street bankers on one end, and the intelligence apparatus was actually largely copied from General Galen's intelligence gathering operation for Nazi Germany, as we could see through the work of Professor Peter Dale Scott and Dr. Joseph Farrell. So we start to get an idea there that they represent more than just a covert intelligence wing. they're plugged into the oil empire, they're plugged into Wall Street interests, and they're plugged into the interests of those companies that are contractors for these different intelligence services, and also that are managing this vast wealth. So it is quite a question. I guess the real answer is that it's a real dangerous possibility. But do not underestimate the UFO aspect in relation to it. This is where they're heading. And the thing is that we know, especially in the independent world, where a lot of this goes. So
another great question.
Yes.
Okay. New is to see. Is Bezos the new Howard Hughes?
Well, it's interesting with Hughes because he was a totally controlled puppet, but he also wanted to go into space, and they used his large empire for CIA activities. And I definitely think that in terms of, he's kind of, Bezos strikes me as more of a front man than someone like Hughes, who was a genuine recluse. But Hughes did have Hughes Aerospace, and he definitely wanted that control. And interestingly enough, as it comes out more and more, we see that Hughes and the whole CIA apparatus that worked with Hughes was largely responsible for the tremendous upheaval around the assassinations of the 1960s. So that ushered in a whole different world. So Hughes was really a central figure in that deep state. And there have been people who've tried to bring that forward, like John Meyer, who was an incredible figure and who really was chased all around the world trying to bring these facts out. And it's very interesting because with Hughes, because it represented so much money and so much power and so much off the books access for the Central Intelligence Agency to grow a bloated agency now into this thing that politicians feared, instead of understanding that they in fact have 100%, and I mean 100% control over the Central Intelligence Agency. This is the thing that Kennedy tried to lay down, and he would go back to his advisors again and again, and they would be saying, well, they don't really think we should do that or whatever. And he would say, I'm the president of the United States. This is what we're going to do. And I think we see that with Trump also. Strangely enough, with Obama, we saw the CIA really cozying up to Obama and the relationships there with Obama's family in Indonesia. All of that, there's tons of CIA influence on that. But I think with Trump, there's no great love lost between the CIA and Trump. And if anything, in the first 2 years of his presidency, as even people who are from a completely, and I mean completely different political spectrum, like Professor Scott, he pointed out that it was a fact that in the first 2 years of Trump's administration that the CIA, the deep state, tried to remove President Trump. So it was another action of the deep state against the presidency. And, there's a weird kind of uneasy relationship there because when we saw the most active critics of Trump, they were people like John Brennan. And guess what? John Brennan is the person who was yelling loud for UFO disclosure. And he said the CIA, we should really get to the bottom of that as soon as he got out of office. Very strange, actually, because the CIA is very secretive in any case. So obviously he was going to be like a PR type on that. Very interesting. And of course, the same period of time was when Elizondo was serving. So his immediate superior would be John Brennan, who was the drone king. So these things we have to see and really get a look at the nature of the combination of these relationships to get a feel for it. But I would say certainly that the Central Intelligence Agency, when it comes to this space push, the influence of the CIA on the media, because remember the Central Intelligence Agency can make or break a career by the amount of info that they give out to you. Because if you're a reporter for the New York Times, you're not in Libya. You're not in Saudi Arabia. How are you really going to know what's going on the ground? You're going to get those leaks from our intel people, and they're going to give you their version of the story, and that can really make your career. And if you don't have that access, and if you're not locked into that system, you're out.
Another question?
Yes.
Okay. Jason Ingram. Who is the deep state looking to take on Trump in 2020, and how does it relate to the TTSA/alien threat plan?
Oh, it's an excellent point. I believe that they are just going to work to get rid of him until he's gone. But my answer might surprise you in a strange way, which is, I mean, they're doing all kinds of unusual things on the Democratic side with, Mayor Buttigieg and people like this who are just ultimately left. And they're just trying to kind of swarm over any elements that remain in that party that are anywhere near center. So they've gone on this kind of wild thing. And I think that they feel over time that that's where they can really get the biggest payoff, is by having the kind of, the AOC characters and the Buttigieg characters and this real hard left tug, because that gets into that communist control aspect, which they're learning so much from this Chinese control. And remember, in China, you have a credit system, a social credit system. So, it's the same thing that we've had some kind of amusing moments talking about this. But Alexandra Bruce from Forbidden Knowledge TV put up this meme, and it was about your smart refrigerator turning off your ability to get food because you said something wrong that Facebook didn't like. And this kind of network world that we can't really allow to happen. I think I see Walter out there.
Excellent.
Hey.
Walter, how are you?
Good. I think I might need to get my other light in a minute, but that's okay. It's good for
You're
now.
looking, no, I can see you fine.
Okay, good.
So far, so good.
Great.
Everyone, while Walter's getting into position, I'll remind you, you're watching the Dark Journalist Show. We're going deep tonight into the alien invasion threat, UFO imminent threat, fake out that is deep in development right now. We're seeing it in the mainstream media. We're seeing these political forces come forward. We're seeing corporate marketing shenanigans from everything from TTSA to Newsweek becoming the face of this thing, and them all self-referencing each other so that it looks like, hey, they've just discovered this neat thing. There's a UFO threat out there, and they're going to stop it with the good guys. And I guess they'll slug over that 20 trillion that they stole and the missing trillions that Catherine Fitz has tracked in order to do it. And that's how they're going to explain all that money missing. So it could be something kind of remarkable that we're going to see here in the combination of those factors. Definitely between here and 2020. I think 2020 is going to be a massive showdown in terms of the election. There's no doubt about it. Go for it.
Oh, me?
Yes. Walter, you're there. You're back.
I wonder, thank you for having me on.
Hey, it's fantastic to see you.
I appreciate it. And I think you're right. I think 2020 is going to be a very interesting year, no matter what side anyone's on. I think it should be, well, it could be devastating for one particular side. And if so, it will make it interesting to see how things get notched up, or what everybody will have to deal with after 2020. It's very interesting. It's all very interesting. As far as the threat thing goes, there are people out there that say, well, I don't believe in the, what Dr. Rosen, what Carol Rosen said. I think that's, I just don't think that's true. I think that's a legend. But you can point to all the phases that she said von Braun told her they'd be doing. You can point to them for decades. So the question is, either, of course she's telling the truth and that was the plan and he kind of spilled those beans to her, or somebody heard this story and got the idea to apply these things because they thought, hey, that's actually a good plan. Either way, no matter how you look at it, the irony is what von Braun said has actually been happening and continues to happen.
It's
and
undeniable.
What Joseph were talking about, I think it was yesterday.
Yes.
I think it was you guys saying that there's the asteroid thing and the alien threat being worked at the same time.
Yes. They were supposed to come in two stages.
Yeah. So they figure, Yeah, it's like throw them both on the refrigerator and see which ones stick, or let's say those hostile aliens will come here on an asteroid, or as Joseph proposes, they're lobbing the asteroids at us, or our own people are lobbing the asteroids at us and going to tell us it's aliens. I was just talking with Dave Altman just on my way back here to come on here, and that's what we were talking about is, okay, to me, it's only logical and rational that we're going to encounter hostile ET civilizations out there that mean us harm. That's logical, that's rational. So therefore, do we not believe when the deep state is telling us it's a threat and invasion? Or do we believe that it's a threat and an invasion?
Yes.
One of them being fake, I guess, the other one being the real thing. How will we know?
Wow, this is really interesting. And I should have really kind of read out a little bit of an intro for you, but people are so familiar with you on this program that almost everyone knows. But you're a fantastic author. Your work, the Empire of the Wheel series, some of the best writing and digging in on a subject. But when you get into your work on Shimmering Light, you're getting into a kind of family history around the military side and around the UFO file. How does that, as someone who has that background in it, how does all this look to you when you see Newsweek saying, we demand disclosure?
Well, I see that as that's something that's being gamed. It's certainly not, the first time that UFOs and these topics have been discussed in the very same mainstream media that some people are claiming it's the first time they've talked about it. I got into a discussion on that with an individual who I won't give him the satisfaction of naming, and he was throwing that crap at me, and I took 5 minutes to go just online, and I pulled up, I think, 7 articles in which New York Times itself, ABC, NBC, and major mainstream media, over the course of multiple decades, had talked about UFOs, and not derogatorily, not as is claimed, and yet it went unacknowledged. He just refused to acknowledge that I had found that, and wants to stick to the narrative that, this is the first time. So
you mean that Louis Elizondo wasn't the person who brought the UFO subject to light in the first place? I didn't know that.
Who? What?
You mean Louis Elizondo wasn't the one who brought us the UFO file?
Well, I know, it's shocking. Nobody ever talked about
unbelievable.
UFOs, but yeah, I see it as just a game that's being played for a couple of reasons. Part of it would be, in my opinion, perception management by the intel agencies, by the national security structure, and not entirely for bad reasons. I was painting my mailbox earlier. So you guys are probably going to see the black paint.
They're going to think it's some kind of a symbol you're doing there.
Yeah, not entirely they're not entirely wrong. When they do perception management, folks. Sometimes it is legit, but there's that. And there's also just, the newest crop of people who want to be the stars.
Right.
And so this is part of their shtick. But when I hear, part of it is, when I hear a Navy pilot or any military pilot make some jackass comment that, I've been flying for X number of 18 years or whatever, and if I didn't know what it is, it's not of this world. I just it's spoken like a true airplane jock. Because those guys, they've been briefed in on everything. Just ask them, they'll tell you.
Yeah,
and it's just ridiculous, but this is what's passing for legitimacy right now, and we're just going to have to ride it out and, see how far it takes them.
Absolutely. Well, you make an excellent point. Let's do it this way. You've got, say, a covert space agency working. Mm-hmm. They're testing things out. Right. They're testing out drones that can go up there in the atmosphere and maybe act like a space plane.
Sure.
Now, if you have a Navy pilot and his level of clearance is going to be,
Sure.
what a Navy pilot's going to have. He's not going to know what that is.
Any pilot, Navy, Air Force, whatever, is going to have a clearance sufficient to his or her duties.
Absolutely.
And that's as far as that crap's
Yes,
going to go.
definitely.
Sufficient to their duties. Now, of course, they're going to know more than you and I, the common person, but they are not going to know everything that's being put up in the skies, particularly stuff that's being tested. And it doesn't even have to be any kind of classified space program. It's just his own, Department of the Navy could just be testing some, as you said, it, some new drone or some new technology, and he's not necessarily briefed in on it
For his own safety. I mean, that's the thing. He's
well,
not,
but
also
and you bring up a good point.
that
with
secrecy
safety.
around it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I've had people say, well, come on, they're not going to test technology against a pilot who's not briefed in. Bullshit. Well, come on, they're not going to test it over a city. Well, they didn't test this over a city. They tested it out over the open sea.
Right.
Just because you can see land from maybe where the pilot was flying does not mean that the land was in any danger.
Here's the issue. And I get exactly what you're saying. The New York Times, Newsweek, New York Magazine, LA Times, they're all referencing the same in-house kind of group. Elizondo, whoever they selected for the TTSA Navy pilot testimony, are, I'm sure they're fine pilots. They're just, what they're doing is they're creating a narrative and they're using these guys, they're dropping them right in the middle of it to create this idea. And so what's happening is we're getting this, instead of them going for a range of opinions, a range of researchers, people who are into this, they're going with this very small group around to the Stars Academy. And the Stars Academy is now plugged into the History Channel. If you look at their board, we're looking at very hardcore, and I mean very hardcore CIA people. And, at the front of it, we have this kind of character with DeLonge, and I have something to read, because one of the things we started the show off with earlier was these 4 points, Walter. One of them was, the first one was Bezos on the moon, which we did a little opening segment on. Corey on the lam, getting into one of our whistleblower farces. This is going on right now. DeLonge on the DOLE, because I'm going to show something very interesting from the SEC report onto the Stars Academy that shows there's a little bit of a back door into DeLonge's musical program, Angels and Airwaves, to the money that they have rolling in to the TTSA. And then the final one, ICKE on the cult, where David Icke comes out and says the Q cult is a psyop. All those things I think are fantastic, and this is quite a week, so there's no way we could have missed all this.
Right.
But this bit about DeLonge and the TTSA and how it echoes back, very interestingly, to this story that von Braun told. Because he was saying the last card, the final card, was the alien invasion. That's where they get all the marbles.
Right.
And so, interestingly enough, what does TTSA talk about over and over again? Threat, 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 threat. So they're working the alien threat aspect.
That's what they're pushing. This is why their TV show is going to be really interesting to see when it premieres, to see what. Excuse me. Okay, dog. Okay, get comfortable. Come on.
Let's see if Olivia's good. You remember the name of the dog?
It's Tiki.
Yes.
Come on, buddy. There you go. Good boy. Sorry about that. I apologize. Where were we?
We were talking about TTSA and threat.
Yes. It'll be interesting to see where this new TV show goes, and I'm expecting more of the same. I'm expecting anything in the form of a bombshell is kind of going to be hollow, because it's going to be, hyped and sensationalized, something that will turn out to be not such a big deal. Case in point, I think in the last 10 days or 2 weeks, there's been discussion about the strange metal, the alloy.
Metamaterial. Oh, yes.
Yeah, which Nolan, this Dr. Nolan, Gary Nolan, I think.
Yes.
Said that it's mundane materials. It's not but fanboys want to spin it, oh, but you're going about it from the wrong angle. Yeah, it might be mundane materials, but who put them together? It's, and you know what? If you came up with an answer for that, they would, and so they don't think we're on to this method that they have of
Right.
never admitting when you're wrong, never admitting when it falls flat, just do the next spin. I think David Wilcock kind of does a similar thing. When he gets caught, BSing over here, he just jumps over there to the other thing,
Yes.
and BS is over there. And that's a thing where you just keep, avoiding, admitting when you're wrong or admitting when you've been had. And
I think
that's what they do, but
his final method of deflection is to talk about how he has IBS, and that once he starts talking about irritable bowel syndrome, okay, they're willing to let him off the hook for anything.
But going back to this thing, I think whatever, because they were talking about that alloy, the alloy, and then what? A couple of weeks or so before the show's going to premiere, they kind of quietly let that get out. No one's saying, well, the alloy's nothing special. So that, okay, what's the alleged evidence or bombshell they're going to have in the show? Actually, if I'm not mistaken, last I heard, the alloy was supposed to be one.
That was the thing, yes.
Yeah.
And they were walking around with these materials, and Elizondo's like, I'm risking my neck carrying around these sacred materials from UFOs.
This guy talking about he's risking his neck, give me a break. Is he the one that showed up? Is he the one showed up wearing a bulletproof vest?
Yes.
He did. That's right.
He was the one. They're going to get him right at that UFO conference. That's the bullseye. They're going to draw it on him.
If I haven't said it before, if there's people new to your audience, I want to say to your audience right now, this is BS. Okay, when a guy shows up at a press conference or a conference and he's wearing a bulletproof vest at the podium, folks, that is theater. Okay, that's vaudeville. It's bullshit. Okay, and when I heard that, that's when his credibility for me in this community, in this field, really was at its lowest. I still stand by my suspicion, and that is, I suspect. This is my speculation. This is my professional opinion, is that he is an operational contractor for the CIA.
Yeah.
Yes, he retired as a staffer. I think he's operating as an operational contractor.
Absolutely.
I've said before, I still stand by that.
This is an interesting thing. You, having been in the service and actually working in the special office, special operations, you understand these things a lot better than the people writing blogs around TTSA, and how somebody, when they retire from intelligence services, they don't actually quite retire. They have a way of staying in as a contractor. And I think the way that you bring that out is very important so that we understand what's happening there with Elizondo.
Yeah, I mean, I personally know these guys like that are that. Okay.
Yeah.
I personally know guys that retired from staff with the agency and became operational contractors.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know exactly, intimately. And also when I was, when you do the stuff I did for the Air Force, you have to interact with the agency. Okay. And, honestly, whenever you do anything operational, I was with FBI, I was with OSI, and then I was in counterterrorism. And I was in counterterrorism in a global venue. You are going to deal with CIA people. And I'll tell you, 80% of them are people I like and respect. 20% of them were some of the biggest a-holes I've ever met in my life, and I wouldn't trust them. But the thing is, I know what I'm talking about with this contractor thing. And this is why, it's my foot stomper to people. People say, oh, but he owns this side business. That's part of what you do when you're an operational contractor. You start your own small business that is legitimate. It's licensed, and you carry out legitimate business operations. In fact, you're encouraged when you're not operational to have your own employment, and you can make as much money as you want through that. And that's what I see Elizondo's doing, is whatever his small, I guess it's a package company or something.
Yes.
Is one of the things. But now he wants to be UFO star guy. He's authorized, if he makes $1 million doing this thing with Delonge, he's authorized to do that and yet still be operational because he's not a staffer, so there's no conflict issue, but also it's part of his operational cover.
Wow. Wow. Fascinating. Absolutely. The whole disgruntled, I'm disgruntled and I've left, because I wanted them to pay attention to UFOs. They wouldn't.
Yeah, that's bullshit. I say that's part of his operational cover. I say this based on, this is my professional opinion. There's something called cover for action. For instance, if I'm going to meet a spy for a brush pass, in McDonald's here in Redlands, California, one of our McDonald's. Okay, my cover, and this is a very simple example. My cover for action is, I'm just having lunch at McDonald's. It's a restaurant. I go in, I order food, I sit there and eat the food. At some point, I go into the men's room, and there's a guy coming out. And as we pass each other, he slips something in my hand, the envelope, the MacGuffin. But hey, if I've got surveillance, if anybody's observing, Walter went to McDonald's and had lunch. That's cover for the action of getting that MacGuffin in that brush pass. Cover for action. Now, part of his identity cover, part of his cover, this is my professional opinion here, folks, is that, he's just a guy who wanted them to tell the truth about UFOs, and he got fed up, so he resigned and retired, and now he's just, fighting the good fight, working for TTSA and doing this. That's his cover. His action is being part of the perception management of steering and driving the narrative on the UFO topic. And what he's got backing him up, interestingly enough, he's got some guys, former CIA psychiatry division guys, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting outfit.
So from my perspective, with my background, 18 years in that world, that's what it looks like to me. And I'm sticking by that until convinced otherwise.
Oh, absolutely. They rolled this thing out, and their attempt was to remove everything that we had learned about the UFO file over the course of 50 or 60 years, and set this thing up with the grainy, weird footage, which was, largely, when you backtrack it, it was pretty easy to debunk, and a lot of it had come out already in 2007. So this whole thing set up around this kind of grainy footage and these half-baked things about the Pentagon releasing this and all the rest of it. And then when we talk to people, one of the greatest FOIA people and researchers on the planet is John Greenwald, and we did a program with him recently. And so the timeline he put together for what Elizondo, which is the big claim now that they make about this ATIP program and what it was, the timeline for it is all over the place. Harry Reid says one thing, Elizondo says another, Delonge says another. That's a mess. That's the biggest mess I've ever seen in my life. And they've never worked to even clean it up. And they've never done anything to have a real honest interplay with a real reporter. They go to softballers who are friends of theirs. Harry Reid is close with George Knapp. He rolls in Elizondo. They have tea and coffee. They have the most lightweight exchanges I've ever heard in my life from a reporter with a subject. I mean, that's not real reporting.
No, and part of the reason you mentioned how things differ and there's contradictions. If this were 100% an intel community operation with nothing but intel, vetted professional intel personnel, their operational stuff would be tighter. Okay, but what they're doing, in my professional opinion, and experiential opinion, is they're embedding their op within this civilian organization, and most of those civilians are unwitting that that's what this is.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So therefore, they can't control everything that gets said by DeLonge or whoever, certainly Harry Reid. They can't control every aspect. So there's going to be some Irish pennants, as we say, loose flags loose ends that,
Yes.
and that to someone like me, that stands out as a red flag.
Yep.
You know, if I were and that's essentially what I'm doing here. I'm acting as when I was the counterintelligence guy, trying to identify, is this corporate activity here, is this the GRU, is this the KGB, is this a foreign intelligence service? I'm going to analyze all these things like I'm doing with TTSA.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing some of the same red flags that says to me, this is potentially an op. Don't trust this.
Yep.
And it has remained strongly that every step of the way.
It's interesting to me. Oh, this is great analysis. Wow. It's interesting to me that when they got the wind knocked out of them, when DeLonge went on Rogan and they kind of fell apart, and then there was some backtracking and some infighting, and even people in the CIA who were originally around this, like Ron Pandolfi, were starting to say, oh, it's, you know, this whole thing is because Hal Puthoff is a Christian Scientist. They were kind of signaling there that they were backing off, but they regrouped the op, which I think is interesting. And somebody in there said, give us one more try. Let us do this. Let us do this unidentified show. And let's try to really push this out and roll it out. And they seem to be, at this point, trying to salvage that operation.
Well, here's the thing. And I think I've expressed this. I know I've expressed this more than once. My issue with TTSA is not the entertainment side of the house.
Right.
I honestly think it's a cool idea if Tom DeLonge's going to do TV shows and movies, you know, dramatic films. I want to see that. I want to see what they come up with because, you know, just like Marvel fans, you can't have too many superhero movies. You can't have too many UFO movies. I mean,
yes, absolutely.
And it'd be cool. So the entertainment side of the house, I actually would like to see that succeed. My beef is with the side of the house that's supposedly telling us the truth and how things are. No, I question that. And so what's interesting is, and what you said is, it's going to be interesting to see how much a divide grows or widens, if it does, between the entertainment side of the house and the alleged, you know, factual, you know, nonfiction, supposedly research side of the house.
Absolutely.
There's a separation there. And it might come in the form of down the road, DeLonge ends up with just the entertainment aspect of TTSA existing. And you see Elizondo and some of the others kind of going off in other directions with other groups, other organizations, which I would caution people to look at as, okay, we entered the scene with TTSA. We use that as our entry. Now we're going to go over here and make friends with this guy, and we're going to go over there and make friends with that guy. Watch carefully. This is already beginning, by the way. They're beginning, for the last several months, they've been making friends with people we've all known for years.
Yes.
They've been making overtures for months. And for the most part, you know, kind of keep it on the QT, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they're starting to make overtures with people that we've all known for years, names we're familiar with. And you're beginning to see the pod people effect happening.
This is invasion of the body snatchers.
They're not so bad. Or, oh, you know, actually. And so basically what I'm saying is they're dangling to other names and other people in the community. They're dangling carrots to see who will take the carrot. And one sign that you can see of who's taking the carrot are you know, just watch and see who starts embracing them more, or maybe giving them consideration or a second chance. It's my opinion that those people have had a carrot dangled to them. And, you know, it could be they're seeing it as a potential, you know, lucrative leap forward or involvement. And that's going on right now. It's been going on for a few months, but just, you know, I would say keep your eye out for that. See who ends up, you know, that you've known for years, familiar names, ends up palling around or doing things with some of these TTSA characters. That's
getting corrupted by the glitz.
Tempted, romanced.
Wow, excellent point. Miss Olivia.
Top shelf grower. Ooh, do either of you think they will drop a bombshell for the 50th of the moon landing?
Oh, it's an excellent point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, Bezos going to the moon is kind of a bombshell. Bezos on the moon. What do you think?
I don't know about this. Refresh my memory.
Oh yeah, well, we did a segment with it, but basically, he's been putting together this whole program to go to the South Pole of the moon and mine for water. And basically, he's like, we're going to have to eventually ship millions of people out into space, and he's becoming one of these leaders, and he's getting all of this flack from Musk, who's the chosen leader there, and now he's this whole thing about Bezos moving into space we covered early in the program, but basically it's very unusual when you look at it this way. I mean, there is a space economy growing out there, and there's no question about it. But Amazon, robotics, food, Whole Foods, setting up the cloud for the CIA, this move into space and the dramatic pace of it now competing directly with SpaceX. Bezos on the moon it's feeling weird.
Well, I can understand, when you look closely, but step back and look at it as, hey, especially where Bezos and Musk are going to compete.
Yeah,
that's what we want. And yes, folks, yes, it's going to be dangerous. Yes, you can die going out into outer space and on rocket ships, spaceships, where but boo-hoo. Most of us have ancestors who could have died when they got on those little wooden boats, that can fit in your living room and cross the North Atlantic. Okay, and many of them did. But see, I look at it as it's the glass half empty, glass half full thing. Yes, the specifics caution us when you look at the individual, right? And you say, oh, I don't know about that guy doing this or whatever. But when you look at the generalities, this is the beginning of what we want. We want private parties, these guys with the money and the means. We want them to trailblaze the idea of private parties having access to space. We don't want access to space to stay only in the hands of any military or just strictly a government agency of any nation. Okay, we want outer space open to the common person. Now, a guy like Bezos, a guy like Musk, if they go up there and they open it to commerce, guess what they're going to need? They're going to need some personnel. Okay,
right.
And then Bigelow, he's going to get the idea. Let's have vacation resorts, in space. Beautiful. Okay.
He's got inflatable hotels.
Yeah. If you're wanting people to go up there on vacation, you're going to want people, giving them towels and cooking their meals and hello, here we have now human beings getting off this planet and going into space. So that's the positive side. But like with anything with human beings, in the general sense, be all for it. But let's keep our eye on any corruption and crimes and sins of the individuals doing it, as we've done throughout history. It's not that Bezos going to the moon is bad. It's okay. What specifically might he do that's a wrong thing? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Well, here's one of the main problems. The last time America sent someone to the moon, was 1972.
As far as we know.
Right, on the record, on the books. There's no question that what do we talk about at our conferences? The Secret Space Conference, which, by the way, I have a choice shot of you right next to Jay Widener.
Yes.
At SSP 2015. Let us not forget.
And Dr. LaViolette.
Yes. And let's think about this for a moment, because Widener had quite a week.
Yes,
Speaking of strange things about space. Jay Widener is one of these guys who, I've met him and talked to him, and he has a great kind of background in putting different projects together, dealing with everything from, Stanley Kubrick and the moon landings and everything else, but this kind of esoteric backlog of information. Oddly enough, he gets involved with Gaia TV, and around this time that he was at the Secret Space Program conference, where he showed up in 2015, Corey Goode, the whistleblower, comes on the scene and says, "Oh, I've been in space," and they build this whole show around cosmic disclosure with David Wilcock. And as they do this over time, we see all this cult-like activity come out of it, and we see a lot of plagiarizing of material. And everyone knows is watched this program where that has gone. But interestingly enough, and this I found quite fascinating. This week, we got Jay Weidner coming out and saying, as the producer and director for Cosmic Disclosure, I apologize because Corey Goode wasn't telling the truth. And, Wilcock was telling people that they had been making up the stories. And he apologized for creating the monster, in a sense, by editing it close and bringing these guys in and helping them kind of concoct the story for Gaia TV at the time. And eventually, of course, both of them got the boot from Gaia because there are limits. But as it turned out, Weidner's confession now, as you know, I did the show New Age Deep State, going deep into that cult and how it operated and the whole blue chicken cult, and this whole thing about rolling in these whistleblowers and getting a fee for the crazier lie they could tell. What is the cautionary tale here for you, Walter? You've watched these people. We all remember, even when we did the 2015 conference, all of the weird marketing and fanatical thing about Goode and how he, they were demanding he be part of the show and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And the incredible downslide of Goode and just the whole kind of mud that he brought into the alternative arena. What's the cautionary tale here from somebody like Weidner coming forward with the truth and saying, look, I'm sorry, I apologize that this happened, how did we get to a point in the independent media where there was any support for junk like that?
Well, I've had two personal encounters with Jay Weidner. The first one was in 2015, and got along with the guy. I seem to recall when he was sitting next to me and the young lady who, by the way, if you look at Corey Goode's subsequent Seattle SSP, whatever woo-woo conferences he had, she's one of the people interviewed. So that proves
she showed up again. Yeah.
Sent there.
Yeah.
And anyway, I recall him sitting next to me there, which you just showed in the picture. He was one of the ones that was vocal against this whistleblower crap. I recall that. And then he ends up promoting the biggest, and then I had another positive encounter with him when Sean Stone had me flown into Gaia to appear on Buzzsaw, a couple of years back. And another positive, very welcomed very warmly by Jay. So I have no beef against Jay. However, watching that video of this apology, he seems to he hasn't learned anything.
Yeah.
Because he comes off as still, saying that people like Jason Rice have legitimacy or Emery Smith, none of these whistleblowers, they're all bullshit artists. Okay. This is nonsense. None of these guys are legitimate. And the cautionary tale is, when you're in the position of someone like Jay, to set aside your personal desires for what you would like to be real and true, and maintain hold on your objectivity. I mean, I do it, you do it. I mean, yeah, there's things I would love for it to be true, but I try my best to couch those things, to identify those things as speculation.
Right.
Okay. Or hey, this is what I'd like. I try to identify those, but I try to set that aside. I would love, for example, you mentioned Shimmering Light, and this is part of your question, my answer to your question. I would love for my dad's story on the face of it, of this hidden underground civilization that he claims he encountered. I would love for that to be true. That is totally cool. It's right up my alley. But when I finally dug into it, did my investigation, did the research, and wrote Shimmering Light kind of as my report of investigation, I had to admit, I had to put in there that the truth is probably more likely what I say in that book about a classified manned space program by the DOD starting in the 50s, and MK Ultra being applied to, plant a false narrative in my dad's psyche. Okay. As much as I would love his story to be true, the evidence, historical and documentary and circumstantial, points more to a classified manned space program and MK Ultra than it does my dad's story. And this is what the cautionary tale, Jay, I think he wants some of these things that we would like to be true, but he was in that position there to be the adult in the room, to say, folks, kids, we would all like this to be true, but we have kind of a responsibility, not just to a viewing public, but to our own professional reputations and our own credibility to properly vet. I'm sorry, none of those guys, if they're being presented by anyone is, this is real. They haven't been vetted. That's BS. Nobody's done a proper, or if they have done a proper investigation, then they're part of the vaudeville, the show that's going on. So, but to me, that's as far as a cautionary tale, it's, don't sell your soul. Don't compromise your integrity in the excitement of some fantasy tale some guy's telling you, no matter how earnest he is. And I know Jason Rice, at least among them, has given a DD-214. And I'm an advocate of, if you claim you're in the military and you're involved in this or any public stuff, the first step is, I want to see your DD-214.
That's rule number one.
Yeah, but folks, all the DD-214 does is prove, it's documentary proof that the individual was indeed in the military. Now the next step is, that's no guarantee that that's an honest person, okay, who's not a con artist, because, folks, I was a federal agent in the military, okay? Why do you think that existed? Because there's dishonest folks in the military.
Right,
okay?
Exactly.
People who commit criminal acts.
Yeah.
So the DD-214, all that is the first step of elimination, in the process of elimination. The next step is, okay, you were in the military, but this other stuff you're saying is BS, and I'm going to look at it.
Right. Yeah. There's a threshold there. I totally see what you mean. Let's take a shot at our own Groovy Bean.
Yes.
Here, putting out this interview, and this is Widener here. I guess he's kind of whited out. But basically, this is available on Jay Widener's channel, and they're calling it Reality Check. They're going into these things. And Groovy Bean, of course, who is very familiar here. She's out there, I hope. It's good to see you. And she did a terrific job with this, really giving him an opportunity to say exactly why he was sorry about bringing them out and how he on earth could ever lose his own sense of ethics and propriety by supporting such an operation of Good and Wilcock telling all these lies on this show, and really kind of, pushing things around on the circuit. And, what's interesting is when you really go into it and you look at what the Blue Chicken cult represented in here, it's definitely the lowest moment for any kind of ufology, any of these movements. It is the absolute bottom. I've never seen anything a lower circus. The people who have come forward about that, and the people like Wilcock who supported Good and brought him out and was getting a finder's fee for bringing him on to tell these bogus stories that had no evidence. And, to be a part of that, the way that Jay was, I think it really undercuts the things that he did himself. And one of the great things I think that the Groovy Bean did was give him the ability to try to explain it somehow. How did you get lulled into this nonsense of Corey Good and David Wilcock plagiarizing material, so that sometimes when I was doing my investigations on New Age Deep State, there would be people who would come to me and say, like, well, without Good, we wouldn't have the missing trillion story, and
what?
And this is, that's Fitz working on it since 1997, who was in government. And this is some weirdo on the outside who claims he's there with blue birds. And, he's got the intel because he was able to plagiarize it. So this is why when we do this stuff, we're tight between two forces. And I point this out often. You have the marketing side coming in, writers, people who think they can make a profit, who can turn a buck with clickbait. And on the other side, the intel forces. And right down the corridor, down the middle, is a very thin avenue where the people who really want to operate with real stories and real research have that, just that thin piece, because everything else is glommed on either side.
I think that's an illusion, actually.
I
I think actually you're right. You have the marketing people and the intel people, but they're not so much really squeezing us. They're the illusion of that is happening. They're not as deep as they would like to be. That's why they're still pushing so hard.
I like it. I like it.
The rest of us actually still have a wider path, down the middle of it. But the marketing guys and the intel guys are getting all the spotlight. They're getting the press.
Big time. Excellent point. Excellent point.
So, with you're constantly hearing about them, you think, well, gee, that's it. That's all that's going on. And that's not the case. It's just that, again, they're getting all the spotlight. And, going back to Jay, I will say, let's be devil's advocate here. Let's, in his defense, and I don't know this, I'd have to go back and look, maybe you know better, but is there a lot of documentation or video of Jay Weidner himself personally being a huge advocate of, for example, Corey Goode?
Well, what's interesting is, here's the funny thing. He apologized to me in this interview, which is very interesting, because I had a pretty nasty exchange with him when I was doing my series. And I told him that although I respected him, I didn't respect the work that he was doing with Goode. And he launched a lot of expletives. But
that's not.
But he was defending the project, and he had said some things publicly about me for doing this report in the first place, but he apologized for that, and that's fine. I accept his apology.
Well, that's to his credit, apologizing.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. Look, the only thing...
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, when you do this kind of investigation, you have to kind of leave the personal side out of it. The only thing that I wanted were the facts, and we knew from the people who had come forward about what this cult was doing and the narratives that they were peddling. And we knew from people like Linda Moulton Howe and Cliff High, the plagiarization aspect. It was just there. The plagiarism was thick. And for our friend Joseph Farrell as well, as soon as he started talking about Antarctica, boom, they just draw on that material. So,
I pointed out that Antarctica scenario, the basics of it, has been around for decades and resurfaces once in a while. So
absolutely,
that to me was it's just one big laughable joke.
Well, here's an interesting, absolutely, and here's an interesting thing. I think what we can do. Well, I want to round this section out with this, which is I think that Jay should have looked at this and said, "Is this guy getting intelligence from a blue chicken?" And that should have been the end of the conversation.
Right. You're right, and that's what I'm saying. He wasn't doing his due diligence as what was he? What was his title at Gaia? Production manager or director?
Producer.
He was definitely a producer.
The top guy in charge of content, right?
Right.
Yeah. And they're presenting this. Here's the thing. What he was doing, he should have been operating with the due diligence of any executive running any major news network out there in journalism. He should have been, because they were presenting this stuff, even if speculative, they were presenting it as nonfiction. This was not entertainment. So he should have been operating from the viewpoint, before I go approving this, before I go putting this show on the air, I want to do some due diligence and see if, there's anything about this that's legit. And instead, they put it out there. Now, he does say, well, the network didn't want to stop, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, yes, I believe that the corporation, they see this as a cash cow. We're not going to stop now. But he is the one who approved it and pushed it and put it on there to begin with, right?
Yes.
And he really should have... I would like to think, but then again, I would like to think that he's learned that lesson and knows that. But in the same interview with Groovy Bean, he's talking like you know, Jason Rice and Emery Smith and the others are legitimate, and they're not. So, you know, I don't know what to think.
Yeah, this is very interesting, right? Has a guy like this actually learned his lesson, or did he just learn it because in this case, you know, that took such a bad turn? And
another thing he said too that I meant to get at a couple of minutes ago was he did say that he believes in put the stuff out there and let the viewers decide, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't present it as though you believe it and you're supporting it. Then say, hey, we're going to present this, but how many TV stations before a show like this put on the disclaimer that the content of the show does not reflect the opinions or conclusions of the network? Okay, if he would have put a disclaimer like that, then the claim that well, I was just putting stuff on there, let the audience decide, would have had more gravitas, would have had a little bit more legitimacy. But I don't know. Do those shows have that on there, or did they just?
Well, I think what you're saying is that Jay should have asked Good for the marriage license from Corey Good for his marriage to the Inner Earth Princess. I think that's pretty much a legitimate point.
Oh yeah, well, he should have been doing his due diligence, and if he really was, if his philosophy was put it out there, let the audience decide, there should have been some kind of disclaimer before each episode reflecting that approach. And you know, I don't know, maybe there was, but you know, I don't have I don't watch the Gaia stuff because I'm not going to pay money to watch that.
Well, that's
Good David Wilcox stuff.
I think you're taking the right course there. What I always found funny, and I just have to mention this because it's so amusing, which is that they called this Inner Earth group, you know, the writers that came up with this stuff. Oh, they were like, oh, it's the Inner Earth group is called Anshar, which was a name that originally Zecharia Sitchin had put in one of his books, speaking about a Sumerian deity. And then he realized in a follow-up book that it was a mistranslation, and he corrected the name, which was something totally different. So this was great. They were stuck one book back for anyone who was paying attention.
Oh, that's great.
Miss Olivia.
We're getting a few requests for Walter to turn up his volume ever so slightly.
Okay, yeah, he sounded good. He sounded good.
Well,
I'm using a phone, so I don't know. And I'm okay. I'm glad you gave me that input because I was afraid I was yelling at them. I don't know how how I would do that. So should I just sit closer to it?
Yes, that'd be good.
That's good. We're going to get this extreme close-up going on. This is an Orson Welles moment, Walter.
I had a request for the squeak.
No.
Can I at least?
No, at the end we will.
Okay, all right. Promise. The chicken is at hand. All right.
This thing is great. Last year, we had an actual inflatable blue chicken here, so we'll reveal him before the show's over. Okay. What else chicken.
Okay, so could you guys go into what would you expect a real whistleblower to look like? You know, I mean,
a real whistleblower. You know, maybe wearing one of those military tunics with a tall hat and a baton twirling and oh wait, I'm sorry, that's I like to kid.
Gary McKinnon.
A real whistleblower. I'm putting pillows behind me so that I can be closer. Is that better on the audio?
Yeah.
A real whistleblower, from my perspective, is somebody who comes out and they have believable, credible, our world, real world, documentary evidence of their employment in this secret space program, for example. But also the things they reveal are provable instantly. A real whistleblower, the reason really that they kind of got that term is because they blow a whistle and they cause a lot of chaos because they're exposing something that's actually real and they're exposing it.
Right.
They are exposing it. They're not going to some folks. Let's be honest. I try to be honest with myself as an author and what I do. Daniel, look, we are all in a very niche market. Okay. It's a niche market.
Yes.
Okay. There's not millions of people watching us right now. There's not millions of people who give a crap about what any of us right, or whatever. Okay. So when some clown shows up at one of our conferences, you know, um, a real whistleblower is going to immediately go to, okay, major networks and be able to back up and prove, okay, like close to immediately what they're claiming. It's going to cause a lot of chaos. It's going to be tumultuous. Okay. They're not just going to be wearing a bulletproof vest at a UFO conference. Okay.
What about bomb sniffing dogs? You're going to have those.
Yeah, you know, the whole thing. It's you're going to know it because things are going to happen fast, and you know, it'll be a true exposure, a true shocker, so to speak. Somebody making the rounds for 3 or 4 years at our little conferences. I'm sorry, that's not the real thing. I don't care how sincere they are. It's just not the real thing. So that's kind of, I think, partially answers your question. But I think being able to legitimately prove, you know, their employment, which, you know, starts with the DD 214. Let's see some security access badges. Now, the other part of this is they're going to get in serious legal trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're going to see them you're going to really see federal agents breaking down their door. Okay. They're going to end up in custody. Okay. And ultimately, they might be in the kind of custody that we won't hear from them again. We're going to know they're alive, but they're going to be in a federal prison or some type of detention area. But that's the thing. They're going to be in real serious legal trouble. Okay.
Bradley Manning. Chelsea Manning.
Yeah, exactly. Chelsea Manning. Now, you know, here's the reason, folks. Here's the real world. The reason Chelsea Manning went to prison is because Chelsea, when Bradley was active duty United States Army personnel who signed documents and swore an oath not to do what she did. Okay, she broke the law, violated a serious trust. Chelsea Manning deserved to go to jail. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm former Special Agent Captain Walter Bosley, U.S. Air Force Reserve, inactive. Okay. That's the way I feel about that. She broke the law. Julian Assange did not break the law.
Right.
Julian Assange is not a U.S. citizen, was acting as a journalist. Okay. And people say, well, Walter, how can you have one, not the other? Because Manning was a U.S. citizen and trusted member of our military who had an alternative to do what she than doing what she did. Assange, he didn't break our laws. What Assange did is just, you know, it's kind of tough titty U.S. government. You know, look at your own citizen who and that they did that. But yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of meandered, but Manning is an example of what would happen to a real whistleblower, some degree of that. But again, the other key is a lot of stuff would happen fast, and what the whistleblower says would become evident and exposed, okay, and provable. That whistleblower would have the hard evidence and would expose that. And it wouldn't be from blue people in outer space.
Right. So that's one side. Absolutely. That's one side of the operation. Everyone, you're watching the Dark Journalist Show. It's a fantastic crowd. This is a special report. We're digging deep here on the entire UFO invasion propaganda meme that the media has really become quite fond of very, very quickly. And they are propping up a number of marketing and corporate campaigns around this, all under the auspices of the Central Intelligence Agency. This is going to get even more interesting the more we dig into it. But I want to remind everyone that you can go to darkjournalist.com. There's a free newsletter there for you to stay up on the shows that we're doing here, and for all the shows we have coming up for the X series, you know, on Fridays at 8 o'clock usually. Make sure you have that, because as we've seen people getting thrown left and right off of social media, the censorship on Facebook, the worst I've ever seen it, throwing these guys off. and actually throwing them off to the point where if you post any of their stuff, then you're out of there, right? So if you post Alex Jones doing a rant about getting thrown off Facebook, you get thrown off. That's pure digital fascism, and let's see how long that can last.
I hear that even people simply having conversations in their threads are getting booted off.
That is, it is digital book burning, and it's one of those things where you just know that there's an entire sea change taking place. The lockdown is pretty dramatic, Walter. I mean, we've been watching this for a while, but it's getting into very, very fascist territory.
Yeah, but and people don't want to hear this. These are private companies.
But they're acting.
Their platform.
It is sort of. But I'll tell you though, we could do a whole show on this because they're actually acting in a public capacity. However, and so there are certain things that you need to do when you act in a public as a public.
Oh, I would hope so.
Absolutely. So the private thing doesn't quite let them off the hook. If they were private networks and they were doing their own kind of like WebEx seminars with each other, then they'd be completely off of it. But because they invite people in and there is that public aspect to it, there are a set of rules that apply to them.
Well, at the very least, they're not living up to what their what they're promoting as their product, and their product is public interaction. And what they're doing is they're putting an asterisk by that. And it's beyond yelling fire in the theater type asterisk.
Yeah,
It's looking like what it is. It's if you disagree with our political point of view, we're going to give you the hatchet. Well, here's my question: is there anybody out there who is trying to create competition for Facebook or I mean, somebody's got to be able to provide a viable alternative to them and Twitter and such.
There's an extreme, and I mean extreme monopoly going on. But I think exactly what you're saying. As it crashes and burns, you will see a lot of venture money going out for people to start newer versions of this, which don't rely on that censorship. And that there is going to be a backlash. But I think this is kind of the low moment of all that stuff. And, I can easily see them throwing you or me off in a heartbeat for the things that we write.
Well, it'd be really interesting if I got thrown off, because I try to make an effort to make sure I'm identifying when I'm giving an opinion on, answering a question. But for the most part, I try to stick to being a geek for my content.
Yeah, right. Well, listen, I don't think the algorithm's going to care. It's not very discriminating.
I try to avoid the political discussion.
You've promoted Dr. Joseph Farrell's work, and he's going to be
and that's the fear, is that it's eventually going to catch up with content, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right now, it's still kind of in that political
area,
but once they get their tyrannical control of that, what will be next? Oh, we want the 200 and some years of British propaganda about Napoleon to be the narrative. So, Walter, no more discussion that, he was anything but a tyrant. So, you're right. They yank me, or at least anything about
your work will go right down the memory hole. And 1984 is starting to look kind of favorable.
Yeah, that's wow.
Fantastic. Everyone, we're talking to Walter Bosley, and I should point out, this is a great conversation, but Walter's work is some of the great stuff you should get into. His latest book, Esoteric Napoleon, we're going to do a show as part of the ICKE series for it. It's coming up. And I'm so much enjoying this book so far. I haven't finished it yet. But it's an interesting departure for you, but not really a departure. It's just kind of a different avenue for you.
Yes, it's the fourth book in my Secret Missions series. But it's a leap forward in that there's some people that say it's the best book I've written yet. And,
yes.
As I go through it, I kind of see what any author, the further you get away from when you finish something, and then you go back and read it, you kind of you almost forget you wrote it. And the greater percentage of you forget that you wrote it, the better your writing has become. That's my personal opinion and experience. And in this book, I've had more occasions of forgetting that I wrote it, and I'm like, oh, It's encouraging. Okay, yay. But yeah, I'm really proud of this book because of the, and I look forward to talking about it with you specifically. But this really took me in a direction where there's technical aspects I had not attempted to tackle, but I couldn't avoid. And it kind of leaped the Secret Missions series, and certainly my research, kind of in Joseph Farrell territory, you might say,
Yes,
because there's a
absolutely.
lot
That's
of
exactly what I was thinking. Yes.
political kind of history in this. Yeah, this book, this book is special among my books. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I really look forward to talking
It
specifically.
is fascinating. It is the kind of thing that keeps you up at night.
And it's only volume 1, folks. Right before I finished it, shortly before I finished writing the draft, I realized, yeah, I have to do a volume 2 because there's so
Excellent.
much more that couldn't be covered in this first one. So I've started that now, pulling all the additional threads, and I'll be spending the rest of this year on, as far as book writing, on volume 2 of that.
That is fascinating. And one of the things that you've done in your work in the Empire of the Wheel and some of the other books, which I think really applies heavily to this conversation we're having about the imminent UFO threat idea being pushed by the media, is the fact that this secret space program, I've tracked a number of things that maybe run into the 1940s for the UFO file. And then something that's great about your work is you can take us back into that 19th century period technologically. Certainly, you can go back esoterically, but you go further back and track that secret space program into this kind of very, very archaic period.
Yeah, well, you cannot avoid, when you look at any of this stuff, even if you're in that school of thought that it all started with World War II, which it did not. But even if you are in that school of thought, take it back to World War II, you cannot look at this stuff and avoid the bell, Diglocka, the mysterious bell, that technology. Yeah. Well, what I was able to do with my research is show that the thread of the German development of Diglocka, the bell, okay, leads back, and this is only so far in my research, leads back directly to the mysterious Sonora Aero Club of the 1850s. A bunch of German immigrants, Germans, folks, in the town of Sonora, California, which is really around Tuolumne County. But they had an umbrella organization, this mysterious shadowy organization as well, called NIMSA, which Charles Delschow, our original source of NIMSA, says was headquartered in Germany. Okay. And if you look at the work of Delschow, which was done, he did these drawings of these flying machines that the Sonora Aero Club were building and experimenting with. And in his drawings, by the way, all done between 1890 and 1923, when he died, shows the Bell technology, illustrates it, it describes it, okay? And he died in 1923, years before we're told the Nazis developed the first Bell, okay?
Right.
And this idea and the technology of this, it actually goes back further to the controversial, Vimana technology, talked about in ancient texts. So they were fooling around with that concept. But what I was able to do, yes, is take the direct thread, that German Diglocka thread, and take it all the way directly back to the 1850s and the Sonora Aero Club. So it did not start with the Nazis. The Nazis inherited this technology.
It's very unusual. Your work with Delschow, bringing that out, and him as an artist portraying these things, and all the things about that Aero Club, so interesting. But one of the most unusual things that came out of that were these references to the name Trump amidst it, as if to say there was some lineage with that name that had to do with the airship aspect.
There might have been a Trump family connection to the Sonora Aero Club. There is the image drawn again sometime before 1923, which shows one of these flying machines called the Aero, AERO is in aeronautics, the Aero Trump. Now, here's what's interesting, and I'll explain what's interesting, and then I'll explain why we think there might be a Trump family connection to this.
Yes.
There was really no one named Trump in the Sonora Aero Club, as far as we know, on the roll of the club that is identified by Delonge. However, the Aero Trump, was in the 4500 series. What's weird and eerie about that is Donald Trump is the 45th president of the United States. So there's a weird precognitive thing.
I mean,
now,
it's
let's set that
extraordinary.
aside. We know that on his father's side, he's German. You know, the great grandfather, whatever, came from Germany and came to the United States. And we know that his uncle, John, as you guys talked about, you and Joseph talked about yesterday, was the man, the electrical engineer, the man who the FBI called to go view the Tesla papers.
Yes.
On the day Tesla died, those papers were seized, and the FBI wanted to see them. They asked John Trump, Donald Trump's uncle, to view those papers. So then we have the Tesla link to the airship mystery. And the airship mystery of the 1890s, in my opinion, and I've demonstrated this in my books, is a down the line product of what the Aero Club guys were doing. So I propose some type of connection there, personnel, a thread of technological development thing going on there. So we have a relative, great-grandfather, grandfather, whatever, from Germany, comes to the United States. We know we had this group of German immigrants in the Sonora Aero Club. To me, it's not inconceivable that Trump's, this grandfather, this great-grandfather, I get them mixed up, could have been a relative of, or an associate of one of these Germans associated with the Sonora Aero Club. This
Absolutely
is possible.
fascinating. It is, the fact that the name is there, that it's in the 4500 series, that we're lucky to have Delonge's work, because as you've pointed out, it was basically snatched from the jaws of
it was thrown out in the trash. I mean, that's a weird thing. We can't really answer. That's one of those weird synchronicitous things in life that brings up the whole what's his name, it's Ingersoll, the guy who wrote the Baron Trump stories with all the weird precognitive stuff. But the actual link could be, John Trump. Why did the FBI choose him? Is it because they knew he had a family connection to this airship mystery milieu, this group?
Yeah.
And how did he get it? Well, maybe what I'm saying is maybe it's true. The grandfather really did have some type of acquaintanceship with these airship mystery guys. It's in the possible file, but that's as far as it goes based on the evidence we have right now. But yeah, to me, that whole precognitive thing is another discussion entirely.
It is. And we demonstrated the X factor, that X steganography, inside of Delonge's work.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking deep on that. I have to say this while we're on this subject, is that when I've done research and included John Keeley's research in the X series, we always get to that moment where they try to kind of run Keeley and his technology out. And it happened here, right in Boston. And he dies in the middle of all of that. And his partner is left with this idea, and they start to say about the partner, the partner did these sneaky things, and he worked with Keeley to do this sneaky stuff. And
they had to discredit him.
Yes, big time. And then there's this very interesting thing that happens where the technology that Keeley had gets sent over to these Theosophists in London. But this idea that the Theosophical Society could have been holding that advanced technology from Keeley, in the way that people from those mystery schools like Steiner and Blavatsky speak really reverently about Keeley and this kind of incredible, almost psychic technology
Yeah.
that he has. What is your take on that? What is this tight link with the Theosophists and Keeley?
I think that, well, the first thing that comes to mind is that there was probably someone who was a theosophist, somebody who was in the organization who knew more than the others
Yeah.
and understood the true value of Keeley's work, that he was, and if any suppression came, that might have been the source of the suppression.
Yep.
Was, we want this, we want to develop this for ourselves. Now we're getting into breakaway territory, breakaway
Yes.
group territory. But yeah, I would say that there were people within just like there's people within. People say, well, all of Freemasonry is corrupt and evil. No, it's not. There are people that have used Freemasonry for nefarious purposes,
Right.
but you can't condemn all of, just like, because we have issues with the activities of the Vatican, we're going to condemn all Catholics. Well, Catholics themselves are some of the best people you'll ever meet. They're not the ones in the Vatican running the show and doing all this bad stuff.
Absolutely.
So, you can't condemn them. Let's point the finger at the guilty, instead of just wiping with a wide brush, because in other aspects of society, we're told not to do that. So,
Right.
Again, I say, don't do it with, these groups. But I think that somebody in theosophy and I think there's a group within the groups, okay, a thread running through all the groups, another secret society that their members are members of Freemasonry, we're members of theosophy, we're members of this, that, and the other. Okay. This is done in the intelligence community. I'll leave it at that. But it's a thread of another organization whose members, go join, and it's a witting thing. Go join the Masonic Lodge. Go join Theosophy. Go do that. And I think Keeley, his work was legitimate, and I think it was the hidden thread in Theosophy that recognized this.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably knew why he was legitimate, why it worked, and how it worked more than even Blavatsky knew.
Yeah, excellent point. And helping to keep that technology underground for development.
Yeah, like here's what I think. Here's the possibility. Through Keeley, through Tesla, eventually through Delonge, the public is given a taste of a possibility. Let's see what they do with it. Let's see who takes this and runs with it and how they develop it. I think this has been done throughout human history. Think of the monolith in 2001. Let's slap that monolith down on Earth where the primates are. Holy smokes. And let's see what it does.
Right.
And I think that's why Keeley's stuff, he was allowed to be public to the extent that he was. And then they draw back. Oh, we got to discredit him, or let's let the critics have their day. And yeah, it hurts the people that were legitimate, but you got to understand the people that are playing this game are looking big picture. Okay, they're looking from a higher elevation. I'm not saying a higher moral elevation. I'm saying, they're up here on the mountaintop, saying, okay, this is going to hurt that guy and his reputation briefly, but the big picture, this is our view of the big picture and such. But, the reason Tesla was allowed to an extent to have his day in the sun and on and so forth, I think is possibly because they were allowed to again, give humankind a taste of something because maybe it was time to advance civilization or human technology. We have to agree that between, the 19th century going into and the 20th were extraordinary periods in human history. When you talk of the ages that people rode horses and carriages and horses and carriages, and they went on sailboats, and then you get into the 19th century and we start with horses, and we end up with there's already flying machines being that we know of,
Yes.
that you can point to historically. There's automobiles already being developed, there's the railroads, there's steamships, and I mean, and then the leap, and I'm not saying anything most people over 30 don't know, and then the leap from these steamships and these little rickety flying machines and little cars that are boxes on carriage wheels, and just look where we were 50 years, by 1950, jet aircraft. I mean, the list goes on, and now look where we're at now with
Incredible
stuff.
acceleration. I mean,
Yes, the acceleration is conspicuous.
Absolutely.
And I argue that in the middle of all this, wow, what's emerging are stories of breakaway groups and in Sonora Aero Club. What's in the middle of all this are human beings that actually were dabbling in and developing things that right now a bunch of people want us to believe that, aliens gave that to us, which is the equivalent of, God came down and gave us the manna from heaven. No, it was human beings playing with the Bell technology in the 1850s, folks, that resulted in Diglocka, not the reverse engineering of a crashed ET flying saucer. Okay, that's not true. It's crap. So.
Well, and it's kind of funny too, because this is interesting, and I should clear this up about you, which is you totally believe that they have craft that have been here from off-world civilizations.
Sure.
They have studied those.
Yeah, I think so. I don't like to give people the wrong impression, so I've started to make sure I clarify that. Walter Bosley has no problem with the existence of ETs. Walter Bosley has no problem with the idea that ETs have come here and continue to come here. What I've said is that it, like, take your UFO reports. I've said a small percentage of them, from my perspective, in my analysis, are ET craft. But
yes.
Folks, don't get misled on that. If I basically throw out the number 10% are otherworldly ET, that kind of thing. Okay, 10% is a big number. Okay, if you have 100 sightings in a year, 10 of those are from another world.
Yeah.
All you need is one. If
yeah.
you have 1,000 sightings, 100 of them are from other worlds. If you have 100,000, 10,000 sightings, in my opinion, of those are from other worlds.
No, keep going up. If you go to 1 million, then how many?
Yeah. What, 100,000? I mean, it just goes on and on. So people tend to think, oh, that Bosley, he pees all over our ET dreams. And no, I just think that attributing everything to aliens and ET, and the persistence with which people just cling to stories like, well, the Nazis got a captured ET UFO and they reverse engineer it, and that's where the bell came from. And you ask people, what's your source on that? And invariably, they saw it on a TV show or they read it in a book, which never provided a source or is repeating someone else's.
It's too easy. It's too easy a synopsis. No question about it. What's fascinating, though, is when I did this report recently with John Greenwald and all the TTSA fan people came after Greenwald for giving out the truth that contradicted the company. It was very interesting because one of the comments that came up about that to me, and I was absolutely stunned by this, it said, if you don't believe in TTSA, you're against UFOs, that you don't believe in UFOs unless you believe.
If you're not with us, you're against us.
Yeah.
You're not
now,
for us,
let's get something straight. To the Stars Academy is somebody's corporate idea about how to corporatize this thing, call in a lot of CIA agents and make it an entertainment group. Okay. It has nothing to do with 50, 60, 70 years of UFO research that very hardcore people like John Mack and all the rest of it have given us a real solid platform. So when something rolls in as a marketing op and you oppose it, that doesn't mean you oppose what the people are trying to make money off of. It means that you are opposing the story, the narrative that these people lay out. They don't represent UFOs. They're just a company that is corporatizing, basically a for-profit company trying to figure out how to make entertainment products around this idea. They're not an authority by a long shot.
Right. If you look close enough, if you could look close enough, I don't think you can if you're honest and, you know, you're not breaking the law. But if you, to the extent that you could look legally, you know, close enough, I think within, for example, the TTSA fanboy crowd, you would find marketing operatives, I'll call them.
Yes.
People that have been given their marching orders by somebody involved with pushing the TTSA narrative, and maybe it's an actual marketing company or whatever. You would find marketing operatives who are just fanning the flames. If you've ever been to a TV show, they have the guy, their gal at the beginning of the show that is the comedian that gets the audience all worked up. Okay. I think they're using a tactic like that. If you were able to investigate it close enough, as I said, you would find that some of these very people that are out there online reacting like fanboys, I don't know exactly who. I'm just saying you would find that among them will be people that that was their assignment. Get out there, build the excitement, build a fan base, you know. And when that damn dark journalist or that Bosley or that CW Channer, you know, comes after us or says anything derogatory, you know, make sure that, you know, you gang up on them in the thread, you know, and that's my view. I think they have marketing operatives doing this. And the other thing is, like going back to what I said before, the dangling carrots. I think they're dangling carrots to other writers and folks in our community. And with the promise of, hey, you can be part of our thing. You can have that UFO stardom. And that's very appealing.
No question. I think a lot of these people who have done great work in the past literally are throwing their normal process and really professional ethics out the window in order to run away and do this, thinking, well, the ends justify the means, but they don't.
Or it's rationalized in other ways. Well, you know, maybe we should give it consideration. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're, you know, and you just want to say, wow, you're not using the discernment that we've come to know so well.
Yeah.
You know, in the past on other things, you know, it's just something that's going to kind of bear out, seeing where the, you know, the chips fall, where the dust settles. So
I mean, yeah, right when this came out and Knapp and, you know, Leslie Kean were promoting it, I was right up front with all of it. I've loved their work in the past. They've done some of the greatest work around the UFO topic, and they're real reporters. However, on TTSA, they dropped the ball completely. They fed softball questions. They cozied up to the New York Times. That's just a fact. And you know, I think that they're great people. They have a great background. But when you get right down to it, on this story, that's how they acted. And you know, that's anyone who's doing real reporting can't miss the fact that Elizondo's never been asked one tough question the whole time he's been here in the public eye, and that's absurd.
Yeah, and it's and what's interesting is the reaction you'll get when you bring that up to anyone, but people like us who think it's a rational question. You know, you get this defensiveness, you get, you know, or you get this withdrawal. It reminds me of Invasion of the Body Snatchers with the people that have already, the pods have already been put in their basement. And
I should have called this episode Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
That's what it is. It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers going on. They're the pod people, you know, and you see these other people that you've known, you know, now suddenly they're not such bad guys. Maybe there's something to their thing. Like, wait, is this you?
You know, this is Olivia's favorite movie, right? Or at least it's in the top.
Oh, it's up my top 10, definitely.
Really?
Olivia, absolutely. Everyone, you're watching the Dark Journalist Show. We're here with author Walter Bosley, and we are looking at all of the flimsy propaganda around the imminent UFO threat coming out of the media and groups like the To the Stars Academy, financed with millions of dollars. And, you know, it's interesting. I want to wrap this up real quick, and then we're going to go to Olivia's questions. Everyone, of course, if you've been asking your questions in caps, we're going to answer them for you. How's it going out there, Olivia?
Going great.
Fantastic. Real quickly on this, I've pointed this out in relation to DeLonge's firm. It's one thing for us to talk about, the good Wilcox circus or whatever it is. There's real money here with the DeLonge group, real CIA presence, real media pull, very disturbing in the angles that it does not get the right kind of scrutiny. And whenever it does, they put in all these things to kind of get people to stop asking questions, and they go away for a little while and come back and hope everyone's forgotten. Of course, I never forget. That's kind of part of the problem. But anyway, this article talking about how DeLonge's UFO research firm reports $37 million deficit. And this one came out from the SEC filing at the end of last year. Now, this was very interesting because $37 million is a lot of money, especially in this arena. And when you have that kind of heft, the influence for journalists who may have been on the fringe of the mainstream and been working this for a long time, maybe even guys like Stanton Friedman who are working really hard, you can see that that kind of money is never something that they ran into working the hard end of the street on this story. Right. And these guys, the way that they were spinning it was saying, well, every startup takes a loss. What's the big deal? But you can see that kind of like the weird intelligence presence with this big outlay of cash and the whole media self-referencing over and over again, people like Elizondo. So whenever the media, now the agreement is, if you mention something about UFOs, you have to mention this Elizondo guy who supposedly came out from the Pentagon and, he's a CIA person and saying, well, they're keeping this secret. And he gets mentioned and referenced over and over again. This is
constantly.
Yes?
Oh, well, I'd like you to explain how that works from the top down.
Well, there's no question. The Council on Foreign Relations fundamentally controls the media from my own experience. And the way that it works generally is there's a kind of freedom that's allowed around topics. But when you get up to a certain point, there's a choke point. And your publisher says, you can't follow that story. That's the end of journalism. And if you go follow it up, and, in order to be a good journalist or somebody who really has those connections, you have to be part of the Council on Foreign Relations. If you're not, you're out. You don't get access to those people, and you don't get access to the CIA, who have their people throughout the world. You don't have that kind of access.
If you don't play ball, you get told that Al Capone's vaults are underneath the basement of a building, or you end up like Seth Rich.
Oh, excellent point. Absolutely.
Or Michael Hastings.
Or Julian Assange.
Hastings too, yeah, and Assange, yeah.
There's no question about it. So it's a really journalism, as we've seen, is when you're doing it for real, and when it's not just to get a shout out at a conference from Elizondo, it's a very, very different kind of thing. Now, I will say this. A follow-up that I found fascinating, and let's see if everyone does. This is the part, you remember we started the show with Bezos on the moon. We've done Corey on the lam and some other things. Now it's DeLonge on the DOLE. Are you ready? Okay. Tom DeLonge, in the SEC annual report released April 30th, 2019. You're going to like this, Walter. So he's talking about different things the company is going to do. It's identified inside there. And it says the docuseries on A&E's History Channel, working title Unidentified, Inside America's UFO Investigation. And he goes on and describes it. Then the next big thing that they're doing, Secret Machines nonfiction series. We know about that. Peter Levenda is involved, and they're doing those stories. Hunky dory, just fine. So in the middle of all this, which is quite remarkable, they have an explanation that comes up. Oh, they're doing book 2 on Secret Machines, by the way. And then there's Secret Machines television series. Okay, I'm going to just skip by that. So they have all these plans for these different entertainment things. However, this is the part I found interesting. The band that Tom DeLonge followed up with after he left Blink-182 is Angels and Airwaves, which never really caught on with a lot of people. But it's something that he's, promoted and pushed, and good luck to him. However, let's check this out. Now, this is from the SEC filing for the To the Stars Academy, which is fundamentally a, kind of a UFO disclosure corporation with these entertainment products. Let's see how this strikes you. DeLonge on the Dole. The actual plan for the next 6 to 12 months. In the next 6 to 12 months as a company, we expect to begin production on a feature film and expand product offerings in response to the new Angels and Airwaves album and tour. What the hell does that have to do with UFOs? It's his band, and he is, you know, in here they talk about crowdfunding for UFO things. You have this corporation, and part of their thing, part of their layout is going to be to support Tom DeLonge's album. That's DeLonge on the Dole for me. But I was actually, when I was looking at this, I did a double take when we got to that, because everything else in here, Secret Machines book, you know, it's all related to this stuff. But then in the middle of it, this little weird thing about expanding their product offerings in response to the new Angels and Airwaves album and tour. Well, that's pretty good.
Now, are there songs? Are the songs by this band about UFOs?
Not as far as I know.
You know, but yeah, that is kind of interesting. That because, you know, they got to be honest and upfront with the SEC, or they can get in trouble.
Absolutely.
That's the smart thing to do is, you know, look at that SEC report every time it comes out and see what the real deal is. And again, you know, I was saying to, you know, someone on the drive, you know, home to sit down with you, is that the entertainment side of the DeLonge thing, I personally have no problem with. I'm all for it. I mean, I think it'd be cool. Whatever this feature film is going to be, that's going to be, you know, potentially cool. You know, it'd be cool if he comes out with the next great, you know, UFO involved dramatic TV series, you know, good one, you know, the next X-Files, so to speak. That'd be great. I'm all for that. And if Angel and the Airwaves or whatever it is does UFO songs, hey, that's cool too. I mean, I think the last UFO song we got was Styx, Come Sail Away in the late 70s, right?
Remind me everyone of great contributions of the past.
No. I'm sorry. I forgot. There's also Van Hagar did this. Wait, which song did they do? One of their songs, you know, the light comes down from above or something or whatever. So we've had two UFO songs.
He's a real contactee.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
absolutely.
I'm joking, you know, the Van.
No, I got you. No, the only thing, yeah, I think you make a great point. I'll tell you what, if the CIA wasn't trying to hijack the UFO file through this film operation, I wouldn't have a problem or report on them at all. But it just so happens. Exactly. It's that side of the house and what they're doing, and the fact that, you know, all these stories, I think you hit on it earlier, is, you know, are all these, I say all these stories, there's really not that many of them, but when you look at the articles that just keep getting passed around, oh, look at this, whatever, and it always references Elizondo and company. Yeah.
Who's really are those journalists just independently? I think I'll look at the UFO question today. Oh, look what I found. Elizondo and the Tic Tac thing.
How about that?
TTSA pushing these stories to the media, and they're covering it. You know, that's the thing. And that's what the fanboys and the people that know nothing about the history of this topic, you know, that's what they're overlooking, is what's the real source of all this hubbub. I see these articles as just part of their marketing strategy for the new TV show, and to serve their narrative.
Oh, absolutely. I've called out some of that journalism around TTSA for doing this, and I've proven it on the record, where they'll take a press release for TTSA and pretend that's an article and
exactly
run these blogs.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Excellent point. Good job if you've covered that, you know, because that's what it looks like. That's what it is.
Unbelievable.
And these dummies are out there saying, look, it's another mainstream media report. No, it's not. It's a press release.
Bingo.
You know, being poorly dressed up and camouflaged as news.
Yeah.
So you know what? Honestly, I want their damn TV show to premiere so we can just be through this phase of their marketing.
Oh,
Dang
no
it.
question, no
You
question. It's
know, it's
unbelievable.
enough is
Yeah,
enough, and let's see if the show's any good. I think it's just going to be another. I suspect it's going to be just another one of those. Here's this decade's UFO show on reality TV, and
yeah.
it'll probably
Well,
fizzle out.
remember, we said when we started the show talking about Jay Widener and the cautionary tale,
Yeah,
getting into it because there's a marketing push behind it and the things, the
right.
ramifications of stories not being checked out. And what did you get?
Mhm.
You got the blue chicken cult out of that. And now we're looking at another precipice where the CIA is there. They're throwing around all these money, and they're basically looking at this as an opportunity,
Mhm.
that company is, to reinvent the kind of the UFO thing, as if it all
Yeah.
started when they found this weird grainy footage that they put on the New York Times in 2017, even though the footage was from 2007, had been leaked a decade earlier. Big deal.
And I see two reasons for this. Number one could be the whole von Braun scenario thing. But number two might be more likely, and that is, I think we're about to see the next major jump in military technology.
Yep.
And so therefore they're getting the jump on, oh, excuse me, let me rephrase that. I left out a word. I think what we're approaching is the next major jump in classified military technology. And so what they're trying to do with this narrative involvement that they've engaged in is get out ahead of that to make sure it's labeled as UFOs and ET, to cover the fact that the Tic Tac is just some platform that Commander Fravor and a lot of other pilots just aren't read in on.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why you're seeing this what appears to be active agency involvement in TTSA, for example, is that next big leap is about to happen, and it's going to be. I think the reason they're concerned is it might be hard to hide. Is the point? I think they're concerned that, okay, people are going to start seeing these things, so we better get out there and lay the camouflage and divert the attention. Now, there's a concern embedded in there. Okay, why if it is to cover military technology, why the leap? Why the desire to, we better cover it up? Why is this happening? Okay, are we about to come closer to the next major conflict? And that's why people are going to start seeing more of this. I don't know. When that happens, it would be obvious that, oh shoot, now we're in, say, a world war with China, and these things were being made to, because remember, the F-117 was classified for years until really they had to start using it.
Yep.
And then we learned about it.
Yep.
But like shortly after it was deployed in active combat situation, active military operational situation, it was shortly after that we learned about the F-117 stealth fighter. Okay, so these things, once they get deployed, they actually have a short life in the black. Give you an example. When I was with the FBI and I was brought in counterintelligence, and I was sent to, the FBI spook training, and I came back on a discreet, working under shallow cover surveillance team. What they told us when we came back from training, we're following KGB and GRU agents every day. In San Francisco is where I work. What they told me and the other new guy, they said, okay, you're essentially going to be running in the black, operating for us in the black for about 6 months. And roughly within 6 months after we get you in the field, they're going to have photos of you in the book in Moscow for their, oh, you're, agent so-and-so for the KGB's being assigned to San Francisco. Go look at the San Francisco book. And here's the FBI surveillance people. Okay.
Right.
And that's what they told us. They said within about 6 months, based on our sources, your picture is going to be in their book. So we have you about 6 months in the black. It's a similar thing with this technology. They can keep it secret for the longest time, for years, they can cover it up, blah, 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 deflect. But once it's actually deployed in a combat situation, it's blackness, it's being in the dark, being a black program classified, it becomes short-lived. And that might be kind of a scenario we're looking at, where these things that we think are otherworldly or whatever, within 5 to 10 years, we're going to find out exactly what they were. Because the F-117, when it's flying around out here in Southern California being tested decades ago, and at least a decade before it was revealed, people were reporting, UFOs, and in some cases it was the F-117 they were seeing.
No question. But when this reaches into the weaponization of space, then we're really in for it.
Well, which is nothing new, folks. Let's be honest. Come on. Oh, we don't want them to weaponize space. Well, you're about going on 7 decades too late for that.
Remember, on paper, they've got binding treaties not to do it. Let's keep that in mind. But yeah, this is part of the reason why the whole space economy goes black. Absolutely fascinating. Everyone, you're watching the Dark Journalist Show. We're here with author Walter Bosley, unpeeling these layers here of this UFO imminent threat propaganda and some of the secret space aspects going along with this, the real secret space program. Miss Olivia, you have waited patiently.
Okay.
And you have done a great job putting this together. What have you got?
Okay, Marie Oliver, how imminent is imminent?
Well, it's very interesting. This gets to a question I was going to ask you, Walter, which is how dangerous? Give us the danger level of that card. That is the 4th card that von Braun said they would play, the alien invasion card. On a scale,
is that the 4th or the 5th?
It is the 4th.
So I thought the 4th was the asteroid.
Well,
because you had the Cold War.
Yeah.
Yes.
Terrorism, nations of concern. Then it's like you got to know. It's like a game, right? We got to.
Yes,
Asteroids and then
absolutely.
UFOs. So you're saying the 5th card, the UFO card.
Yes. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna read from Carol Rosin's statement about it. And so we're all on the same page about it. So this is actually Carol Rosin's statement. She says, I met the late Dr. Werner von Braun in early 1974. At the time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played. That game being the effort to weaponize space, to control Earth from space and space itself. What was most interesting to me was a repetitive sentence that he said to me over and over again. That was the strategy that was being used to educate the public and decision makers, and the scare tactics, the spin that was being put on as justification for our advanced weapons system was based upon how we identify an enemy. The enemy at first, von Braun said, to justify our space-based weapons system, first the Russians are going to be considered the enemy. Then terrorists would be identified.
Mm-hmm.
Then we were going to identify third world crazies.
Mm-hmm.
The next enemy was asteroids, and asteroids were going to build space-based weapons. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card.
Yeah.
And over during those 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card and say, and remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. Pretty powerful testimony.
Yeah.
So where are we? This is a question I asked Dr. Farrell. We certainly have engaged with the asteroid one, but it seems like they seem to be moving the asteroid and the alien invasion card at the same time.
Right. It does appear to that they're expediting this. I think what they want to do, and this probably goes hand in hand with this leap in technology that I mentioned that we're going through. I think that goes hand in hand with a leap of the degree to which space will be, that they want to weaponize space. So far, it's probably limited. You know, it started with missiles, like in the film Meteor. You remember the film Meteor?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
1980, where they had the missile platforms and stuff. And then whatever Star Wars is, whatever SDI it actually is, and I think it is something. I think it's something real.
Absolutely.
Whatever that is, and then, you know, on to the next step. I think it's a, because I'm an advocate for the existence of a classified manned space program since the 1950s, which I lay out the details in shimmering light. We have had, in my opinion, a military presence in space as we know it. Now, the extent of that would be, to me, you know, the moon. And I think it's very possible that even just to an expeditionary level, we've put boots on Mars. I think we've tried it.
That is
But what I
fascinating.
think is going on is I think they want to notch that up. They want to take that to the next level. So we're seeing this leap in technology. Okay. We're having a president come out and announce Space Force. We're announcing a return to we're announcing all this, you know, flurry of activity. We're seeing other nations go to the moon,
Yes.
you know, and so I think it's something that's committed to. It's a foregone thing. We're not going to be able to stop it. The next question is, what are the real reasons? If we're being lied to, like von Braun said, according to Carol Rosen, okay, then what is the purpose of the lie?
Yes.
You know, what does do they anticipate that private entities would want to leave this planet, so we need a space force to keep people from leaving the planet? Is it a case of, like during the Renaissance, when we know damn well the powers that be, the, you know, certain people in power in Europe knew that the New World was there?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm in that school of thought that the Columbus revelation in 1492 was a put on, a staged event revelation. Do they know that there are habitable? Do they know, for example, and this is speculation, hypothesis, do they know, for example, that Mars actually has a habitable environment, atmosphere, and that eventually this is going to be announced and we're going to find out? And so what they want to do is keep any private, and you know, you got to ask yourself, why the lie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Why the lie? Or and this is what blows my mind when trying to answer this. Von Braun said that would be a lie. What part is the lie? That the alien threat or the alien whatever would be used as a lie, or the fact that they're a threat is? See, you're getting into multiple edges on the sword there, more than just two, because he didn't say aliens weren't real, did he? He just said
Right.
it would be a card used
Yep.
to weaponize space.
It's all a lie.
It's, yeah. So, damn, Werner. You know, we're left now with.
He left us something there.
But does that mean that, okay, aliens are real, which I'm convinced, extraterrestrials out there, but I'll go back to what I said earlier on, a couple hours or so ago, whatever, that at some point we're going to encounter ETs that are hostile and are a threat. This, folks, just this fantasy of, oh, you've developed, you know, technology to travel interstellarly, so you must be peaceful. Oh, please grow up, those of you who think that. And stop listening to New Age fools telling you this crap, okay? Eventually, we're going to encounter ET civilization that's going to be hostile. So that says, well, maybe we need the weaponization of space to protect us. But then von Braun says, no, see, that's the lie. So, okay, so there, once again, the common man and woman is left, you know, with a big WTF. So,
well, it seems like over and over again we get lied into wars, for example, like the Iraq. Yeah. So you can look at it from that perspective of, yes, there are these things out there, but, you know, as it turns out, we don't need to build up massive weapons in space to defend ourselves against them. Obviously, we've kind of dealt with them for thousands of years without having that particular problem.
Do we need it to counter? Let's be honest here. If there's another traditional world war, it will likely be whatever side we're on versus whatever side China is leading. And with China going out in space, is this because we need to be able to counter China? And why the elaborate lie to us over it being, an alien threat when Chinese intelligence is going to know damn well what it's really about? So why lie to the people? Why not say, hey, folks, China's a serious threat, and here's why. Will that ignite the conflict? And they want to avoid that? Are they using the alien threat to avoid igniting the next world war with the opposition? I don't have the answer.
It seems to me these things are designed, just like many of the deep events like 9/11, they're designed to give incredible centralization of power.
Yes.
So if I'm afraid of an alien threat, then I'm willing to give you way more rights and authorities over me as an individual citizen.
And that brings us back to the globalists.
It does.
And that I see. So I think we can eliminate the there's really a thing going on. I don't know, with the space thing, the alien thing, and I think because of what I said, that the Chinese would see through the ruse that they'd be using on their own people. So what option does that bring us? It brings us to the global centralization threat, and what it is they want us to believe in these dangers. So exactly what you said, so that we as the masses will hand over control to them. So therefore, I see it as very dangerous, is very wrong. And whatever you want to, however you want to apply the word evil, I see that. Globalism is bad.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get this shot of von Braun with Carol Rosen there in 1974 at Fairchild Industries. Quite a journey that we've had over those 40 some odd years. Miss Livia.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to mention, we were talking about the rings of Saturn.
Yes.
Speeding things up a little bit.
Yes.
Do you want to address that?
No, that's very interesting. You can get right into questions.
That's okay. So I have two questions that are sort of linked. R. Andrews says, what does Walter think of the ET space travel theory versus time travel theory? And Mod Wiz is asking, what if the good ETs are in fact the advanced humanity that the parasites and their brainwashed minions drove underground, and the government wants us to think that they are alien?
Oh, that's interesting.
Go back to, the first one.
Easy one first.
Mod Wiz, damn it.
Okay, try it.
The first one was, what do I think
of ET space travel theory versus time travel theory? So
yes. Both. I have no problem with either. I do think that ETs exist. I think they've been coming here. I think they continue to come here. I think there's civilizations that can travel between the stars. I think that's the case. Time travel is it's something I'm not prepared to go into an in-depth discussion on, and without sounding like a boob, but it's something I'm keenly interested in and have been looking at as a researcher, investigator for about a few years now. At present, I think there's something to human beings are, us, if not moving through time through use of technology, at least through use of technology, maybe being able to look through time. Okay. I think there's possibly something to that concept. It
seems inevitable that you can view it without interfering with it.
Well, view it without going there. Like maybe there's some scope, and I know there's been ridiculous BS ideas out there that claimed, this was real. And I've been personally told, about this technology existing, but beyond just being told. I haven't seen the technology myself, so I'm not going to vouch for that. But I think both. I
Yeah.
think both are something that should be taken seriously, and I think the ET thing has been done for ages, and I think the time thing is something that.
I want to try to jazz Modwiz's question a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting question, but I want to put it this way, which is Mac Tonnies did a book about those crypto terrestrials and how they were slightly ahead of us.
Yeah.
And that they had their own technology and that they operated in a way underground that we weren't able to detect them.
Right.
So to kind of bring his question around in a way, how likely do you think it is that there's another civilization operating that is technologically advanced here on Earth, parallel with us?
I think it's possible. I think the greater degree to which it would be possible, approaching the possibility of likelihood, says to me that they would most likely be human as you and I, as any of us, humans from either another world or another dimension. But they would be human, so that they could more easily move about our world, interact with us. As far as their technology, there's still a big chunk of this planet that, when you look at a nighttime map of the world, the globe, there's still vast dark areas, okay? Particularly the oceans, the seas. I'm one of those that, thinks, hey, people, pay attention to USOs, these unidentified
Absolutely.
objects, because that's where they could be hiding and coming and going very easily. Now, something else is, it wouldn't be impossible to embed any sufficiently advanced technology that we're talking about in a known platform. I mean, put this technology in a a little Piper airplane or a 747 or whatever, and people see it flying through the sky. Oh, okay, there's an airplane, and you get out over an empty area and you just do that. You have to consider that possibility. So there's any number of ways that they could camouflage themselves, but I think they themselves, you have to consider that they might very well be humans, exactly like us. And then that gets into the whole thing that, and some people say this is what the Human Genome Project might actually be about. And all this push for get your DNA test done is they're trying to identify all the number of us who have this other world DNA, because I think there are some of us who are the descendants of, human folks that just came from somewhere else. And when I say some of us, I don't mean this special group that also lived in Atlantis and was a princess and, Rh negative, Rh negative, Rh negative. I mean, there's probably millions of us, maybe a couple of billion, who would have this off-world human DNA. I think there's a lot of us.
Yeah.
I think it's a condition of humankind on Earth. I've said it before, the idea that when people say, well, human beings just like us couldn't possibly originate on another world. You know what? When your beloved, precious scientists visit every habitable world in the universe and they find not a single human being like us, then and only then can they make that claim. And until that happens, there could be humans on millions of worlds out there, humans like us. We don't know.
Absolutely. Great point. Miss Olivia, okay, so we're kind of running into time, so we're going to do a lightning round of questions. And so ask the questions, and Walter's going to try to fit in as many as he can.
Okay, Bruce Ross Morgan.
Hey.
Walter, what are the chances the Vatican Library will reveal some of its hidden works as a public relations effort?
No, I don't think that's likely. I don't see that happening, but it's not impossible. So I'll put that in the not impossible, but I don't see it as likely.
Right. And we know they talked about baptizing aliens there a few years ago. So that's kind of interesting twist.
If
Okay.
if they did it, it would be because it served. Here's how they would. Why I think they would do it. The only reason, if it served their power base in some manner to do that, then they would. So if it serves them, they would. It wouldn't be a true public relations thing.
Gotcha.
It would serve them some way.
Absolutely.
Okay, Justin Thomas. Do you guys know of Conquistador del Cielo, Conquerors of the Sky, a secret society of aerospace execs that meet at Bohemian Grove?
Well, this is an interesting one. Send me information about that to info@darkjournalist.com, and I'd love to hear more about it. That seems like one of those inside baseball ones. Keep rolling.
Okay. BKMCL. I want to know what all these ground-shaking booms, mysterious sounds, and lights are. The arrogance of our government saying nothing about it is insane. And Grandma Tibito says, one of Linda Moulton Howe's whistleblowers says we are already at war, and this accounts for all the strange sights and sounds. Thoughts?
Yeah, this thing about the booms, Walter, maybe underground bases, maybe pole shift activity. How does it strike you?
To the extent that I've looked at it, and I have looked at it because it is interesting, I think there's some geophysical thing going on for the most part that's causing this. If there is anything at all to the underground war thing going on, it could be, that Tesla earthquake technology out there being messed with.
Excellent.
I could see that, but anything more comic booky beyond that, I think, is just more hoo-ha.
I'm going to ask you this. I actually don't know your opinion on this, which is that in relation to this, there have been always strange stories about the Dulce, New Mexico aspect of something like that, something like a war that took place or a shootout with aliens and things. Some of those people, like Schneider and all that whole milieu, it seemed like the story came up over and over again. Did you find anything in relation to Dulce that led you to believe something strange had happened there?
Well, no, I've never found anything to prove these Dulce claims. And I have to say, as I talk about in Shimmering Light, part of my dad's story, which he started telling, in 1974, 6 years before the Roswell book came out, was that he and another guy, as part of a retrieval operation, were in the underground, and they turn a corner and there's the underground people, and one of them raised this hollow tube and killed the guy he was with. And boy, what does that sound like? That sounds like the military guys encounter the other beings in the underground and there's a shootout and somebody dies. What does this mean? Well, it looks to me particularly reflective of my research and investigation, what I said earlier about MK Ultra and planted narratives. It looks to me like this story, this basic story, is something that has been used as a planted narrative. So on the surface of it, I do not think it really happened or it's true, as we've been told and these people are claiming.
It's quite a weird echo, this story, because even in your dad's tale, it's got that flavor of them being surprised. Very interesting. Wow.
I mean, if they were using this on my dad in the late 50s, and it worked, why not keep using it? And then you have people who just want stardom in our community.
Yes.
So, they'll use it for their purposes. And in that case, it's just a big lie.
There's a pilot out there who was a very interesting guy in the early 60s. I'm trying to think of his name, but he had one of these strange encounters. And they took him on board, and they said that they were from Lost Lemuria, and they demonstrated the efficiency of this craft going to New York from where he was in New Mexico in something like 10 minutes. this thing about the ancient culture, the ancient civilization narrative that pops up once in a while with the advanced
Yeah.
technology, we hear that a lot about Shasta, of course.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
That's hard to dismiss.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's hard to dismiss, and I have absolutely no evidence that I can provide that would convince anybody watching or listening as to why I think it's hard to dismiss. But that's my position on it. It's
You feel like there might be something to it.
yeah, and yeah, and I'll say this because of my personal research and stuff that I've been looking at. Yeah, I've said this. I've said this part publicly. 10 books now with Esoteric Napoleon. It's the 10th one. Kind of diverse subjects within our weird world, and in every one of them, the Tuatha De Danann show up.
Yes.
And I find their landmarks, and I find their thumbprints and their fingerprints, and even though I look at instances and say, nah, I don't think so there, I don't think so there, I still cannot and will not deny their existence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So oddly enough, and so you say, well, Walter, if you say like even your dad's story was a planted narrative, and you say Schneider's and stuff like that, remember one of the guys involved that we know of in MK Ultra was Gottlieb. If I'm not mistaken, Gottlieb is the one who was into lore, folklore, and ancient mythology and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, just because they were using these things either on my dad or Phil Schneider and others as a layer of cover for something, doesn't mean that these things aren't real out there somewhere. Is what I have found in my research. So when the day comes that I'm prepared to talk more about that, I prefer to talk more intelligently about these things. But right now, it's just something that I won't deny is a possibility.
Well, the Tuatha De Danann, it's so interesting. And of course, they come up a lot in the steganography research. It's so interesting to me that they come up so often in your research as well. And
not just mine.
Right.
35 years ago, Jacques Vallée came to them too.
Yes.
I mean, his research ended up at them.
Isn't that's an interesting turn from the ET aspect directly to the Tuatha De Danann?
Yeah. And like I said before about them, that doesn't mean ET doesn't exist. That's the beauty of all this.
Right, absolutely. Well, here's one quick thing about them, which is unusual in terms of lore, which is there's an actual background record, historical record of Irish kings linking them back to the Tuatha De Danann. So it's not just straight mythology.
Right.
It's got the mythological aspect, but it's got a historical counterpart.
Yes, it does, and I think that is subsequent to their original arrival. Okay, when I read the I can't pronounce it right now. The book, and you read the and you read the English versions. I'm sorry, I don't see boats arriving on a shore in that description. Okay, these beings didn't. I'm sorry, I don't see that as boats arriving on a shore.
Yeah.
And the anthropologists love to dismiss anything not anthropological about the Tuatha, because I think it makes them nervous. There's a lot of people out there that embrace science because certain aspects of reality that they cannot explain makes them nervous, and they don't want to embrace religion. So they embrace the other religion, which is mainstream academia. And that's what the anthropologists do with the Tuatha De Danann.
Wow.
Is they explain them away as, it's just the tribe of Dan, it's just the tribes. And I go into that in one of my works where I say, no, I think there's the otherworldly Tuatha, and they came in and they influenced various human tribes. And then those tribes, became their representative tribes, in the field, and that's who the anthropologists have glommed onto. But when it comes to the original arrival, I think that makes them nervous.
fascinating. Oh, it is fascinating. The Turnanog, the Dreamtime. Absolutely interesting that they have these two aspects of being mythological and factual. Very, very interesting.
It's been my understanding in the research, and it's my opinion, that they also don't give a damn whether people believe they exist or not. They don't need to. But go ahead with the next one. I don't want to.
Okay. This is great. Epic Journeyman.
Yes.
Okay, crazy question. Are the people who go missing in national parks and some of the milk carton missing kids actually inductees into the secret space program, i.e. they are shanghaied?
I don't think anybody in the secret space program has ever been shanghaied into it at all. So no. Now, there is that interesting thread of German adults they talk about that. I think some of them were technical guys or experts or something that are among the missing.
Mhm.
I could see using, turning up missing to be a cover for a recruitment into something where they give up their. But that's thin, folks. Let's be honest. That's kind of thin. But admittedly, there's something weird going on with these disappearances in the national parks. Admittedly, Pilates is on to something.
Oh yeah.
Most definitely. Anybody that looks at that is. But no, I don't think anybody in an SSP has ever been shanghaied into it. And I think the people telling these stories are liars.
Right. No, I think the secret space program doesn't lend itself to that. Underground base work could. That seems a little more plausible to me.
I don't think. I think the only people that would be shanghaied and abducted is something that would be so. It wouldn't be underground base work. They're going to use personnel that are voluntary, that meet the criteria, that have been, that are authorized, that want to do it. I don't see.
There are underground base scientific experiments,
yeah,
which is
I think
to
what's
consider.
Interesting about that, I had a conversation with Catherine Fitz about this, and she documented the amount of immigrants who disappear coming into the country. I always thought that was an interesting corollary. Well, you can't be a citizen, but you have an opportunity to be trained, to be developed, to become a workforce for this underground base work. And because of my familiarity with the continuity of government aspect and how they built this elaborate underground structures in order to survive war type, nuclear war situations, you can see how secret that whole economy would be.
When they say immigrants disappear, what do they mean by that specifically? They can't trace them anymore?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
do you know how many immigrants they get here? And then they just get embedded into their own ethnic communities, and they can function entirely without.
You can disappear. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I would have to know the details of these disappearances of large numbers before I could comment on that intelligently. But my investigator side tells me, there's more to that, and it may not be what people think in that regard. But as far as personnel in any underground base, they would never. I don't see them shanghaiing people for personnel. Now, when you get into possibly somebody's doing some horrific, nefarious Mengele kind of crap, I could see them, abducting homeless people or God, worse, orphans. That. Yeesh. My criminal investigator mind says I could see maybe something bad going on there.
Wow. Yeah. It's so interesting. The Mengele stories, there are this entire villages there in South America where he was playing country doctor and doing all these twin experiments. So there's no question about it. Last two questions, Miss Olivia.
Okay. All right. Jason Doss asked, pretty please. So I'm going to ask his question. Please see if you can get Bosley going on the Council of Nine.
I don't know that much about the Council of Nine, enough to go on a thread about it.
Yeah, I can appreciate it. Let's keep rolling.
Okay. So Teresa.
Sorry, I'm not trying to blow it off. I just honestly don't know. And I like to be honest when I don't know about something.
Oh, no, absolutely. No, it's one of those, it's good to kind of feel it out.
Teresa.
Something new to investigate.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Teresa 42213. What does Walter think of interdimensional beings?
Two to
Mhm.
I think they're all demons, and you should all get to church immediately, 3 days a week. I'm kidding.
3 days a week.
I think a lot of interdimensional beings. It's something I'm very interested in. I have no problem with, the concept of their existence. I think we were talking about that a little bit before. I think going back to the Tuatha De Danann, I think something about them. I think their knowledge, something about them. They understand. They have some type of interdimensional technology, I think.
Yes.
There's something interdimensional about them, is what I'm trying to say. And so, yeah, you're getting into a realm. Here's the thing we all have to deal with in our community. We do these podcasts, we do these write these books, and we get out there and we're talking about it. You can eventually venture into a territory where you have to make a decision, and you venture into territory where you might encounter things that, no matter how much you want to talk about it, you're not going to find out enough to talk about it, or it's something that doesn't want to be talked about, or it's something that you realize, wow, but I'm not going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Things that should not be discussed. You're gonna stumble on that if you're giving a seriously honest look at a lot of these things. You are going to come to that point where you decide what you'll talk about and what you won't, and maybe even, in some people's cases, I think you'll walk away from all of this, from the public aspect, because what you've found, what you've come to, what you've confronted, what has confronted you, what's made itself apparent, changes your perspective on, the whole idea of talking about these things. And I think interdimensionality that's something that, as you get close to the idea of interdimensionality and any kind of beings or whatever, that you're going to encounter what I've been talking about. You're going to reach that threshold.
Wow,
that decision
absolutely.
point.
And you can be an individual and have such an experience that it would blow away any kind of secrecy that any government agency has around a particular thing, whether it's psychic phenomena or UFOs or whatever. So the idea that we would have to look to a government entity to give us that kind of information, it's not really accurate.
Yeah, you can. What you're talking about here is some of these things you want to know, folks. Go out there and really look for them, and you might be surprised at what you find, and you won't care that it's not disclosed.
Yes.
And don't be surprised if you reach, if it changes your mind on, when I hear people stomp their feet, the public has the right to know. No, you don't. The individual has the opportunity to know, but the masses don't have a right to know, because, folks, we're talking about things that might very well be part of the human rite of passage into becoming that whole being that we're supposed to be. Okay, UFOs, interdimensionality, ghosts, all these things might be part of the objective and the what you achieve in going through a process. Okay, so I think people that just stomp their feet and demand that a press conference is held and all these secrets revealed, I don't think. I think they're on the wrong track. I tend to joke and say, oh, those are the people that they've never been reincarnated. This is their first time incarnated. So they're the ones that are like, oh, I'm conscious being. Oh, somebody give me the answers. Oh, they're the emotion first people. But seriously, it might be that the answers we're seeking on these strange things, it might be that we're supposed to go through an individual process to find those answers as individuals.
See, you won't get that kind of performance from just any guest. Only Walter can pull it off. Excellent. Final question, Miss Olivia.
Oh, can I have two, please? Sure. Quick. Okay. So Jorge Soto.
You say jump. Okay. I say how high?
I had to fit this one in. Jorge Soto.
Okay.
John Rappaport, 2017 report on extraterrestrial biological threat and TTSA link.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think they would use that angle as well? Lots of reports last year on ET viruses and MSM.
That's a very heavy question.
It
John
is.
Rappaport did an excellent overview on the team at TTSA, getting into some of the things that struck suspicion in Joseph Farrell and in you, Walter, as I recall, and looking at these bios and seeing how many of them were linked with kind of biological backgrounds in terms of their doctor activities.
Wow, that is, and coming from John Rappaport, that bears looking at and seriously considering. Yeah, you know what? I could see them using that as the threat that, you don't want to encounter these ETs. But I could also see them using that to keep the masses from wanting to go into space.
Oh, yeah.
You have Bezos and Musk and others saying, hey, we're going to build this, that, and the other. And them coming forward and saying, oh, but you don't want to go up there because you'll get some terrible, god-awful virus from them to scare people off. I think I want to read what Rappaport wrote about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I'll send it to you because that is absolutely fascinating. Great
Or
question.
is it a cover story for a released plague to depopulate the planet?
Ah, yeah. Ooh, very good.
That's why I
when they get, yes, there's no question about it.
Could be.
It definitely could go in that direction.
Okay. And on a lighter note, the BB blog, does Walter see any significance in the use of blue in Blue Origins?
Blue Origin,
Origin.
Yeah, name of Jeff Bezos' program to go to the moon. It's that I think I have a picture of it here, but it is that craft. It's the name of his program to go to the moon. Blue Origins.
I would have to know. That's interesting. I would have to know more about why it's Bezos' craft, right?
Yes.
Why he claims that he called it that. Because I think the answer to the question might be in why he's claiming he called it that. That is interesting.
Of course, yes.
Blue what? Origins?
Blue Origins. There it is. Actually, this is the site of the craft here. That's him introducing it.
Yeah, that was in your graphic.
Yeah, and it says Blue Moon here. Oddly enough, it doesn't say Blue Origins, but that's the name of the program.
Okay, maybe it's just a reference to, this is a great, adventure and the fantasy element and the, hopes and dreams, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. It's not, it's not
Absolutely.
Yellow Origins. It's not Red Origins.
I want to mention this about the BB blog, which is she visited you recently and you traced the steps of your book.
Oh, I gave the Empire of the Wheel tour that I have given to people, including Joseph Farrell, Scott DeHart, Tessa Dick, and Andy Colvin, and some others. And her and Marsh and what does Marshall go? I can't remember what
Martian
he goes.
Archaeologist, is that him?
Yeah. Martian archaeologist. Yeah. We had a great time. I think they enjoyed, seeing firsthand the sites.
I think that's awesome to be able to go through that whole book tour with you. It sounds fantastic. What a great thing.
Yeah, it's. I always, sometimes it's months between the times I go out there to these places myself, and I always enjoy going. Once I get out there, it's showing it off. But
nicely done, Olivia. You got the last question.
Okay, all right. So Silver Fox says, U.S. humans make time capsules. Or I guess it's us humans. Do you think we have found an ancient time capsule maybe on the moon?
I don't see why not. I think we have found relics on the moon. I think we've even more likely even found relics on, I don't want to say more likely, but I think we've equally likely found relics on Mars. I think that's a no-brainer. But yeah, I think that's what may have instigated this whole push for the classified. I think the drive to have the space program was just that exploration drive that human beings have. But once we got out there, we discovered, oh, shoot, wow, there's been others before and a long time ago. And then I think that was part of them. This is what I think. This is my hypothesis, my speculation. I think that's how they discovered how whoever was on Mars, for example, ended up, they came here and they realized, oh shoot, there's a whole bunch of us
Yeah.
that have that DNA.
Oh, that's good.
And again, enough of us that people need to stop going around to conferences and saying, I am special, I have Martian DNA. Oh, you are not special if you have Martian DNA. It's human DNA, in my opinion, and there's millions of us that likely have it.
Wow. Miss Olivia.
And we're not special.
No, it's
in that regard.
Walter, fantastic to have you here. Great.
Oh, thanks.
Great commentary. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think the imminent threat propaganda, we're going to keep dipping into this because we're seeing it over and over again. The more that they press it, the more we're going to look into it. Good
job. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking with you about the Esoteric Napoleon. Esoteric Napoleon's our next show, our next X series show with you. And we'll definitely get that together. I'm almost done with the book. Fantastic book. Where can people get it? Only at lulu.com. Print on demand. It doesn't take that long for them to get it to you. But lulu.com. It's worth the wait. Wow. Walter, incredible work. And I have to highly recommend his books as an author. Just outstanding. The Empire of the Wheel series. Absolutely riveting material. And the new book, Esoteric Napoleon, off the charts. It's great to have you here. And we are definitely going to have you back on to do a whole show just on that. Great. Look forward to it, Daniel and Olivia. And thank you guys so much for having me on again.
It's always fun.
That's great. Miss Olivia, as usual, you get the last shout out.
I wanted to thank Brandon Young, Christine Seibel, Madeline B., Bill Gometz, Doyle Wayne, M. Leland, and Daryl Dotherow for their generous contributions tonight.
Oh, fantastic.
Through Super Chat.
Wow. Thank you so much. Of course, supporting the show is very helpful. You can go to darkjournalist.com and sign up for the newsletter. Keep us in touch because it is really an incredible atmosphere when you have to wonder what platform will be there the next day. And the pipeline that we can have is that newsletter. And we'll send it to you about once a week, and you'll get that in your inbox. You can also subscribe to the Dark Journalist show, and you can do that at darkjournalist.com. Thank you so much, and thank you for your support tonight. We'll be coming back with the X series number 55, a very special episode next Friday at 8 p.m. And I saw that we had Gigi Young out there. Of course, it's great to have you. Carly from Dimensions and Beyond, fantastic. And thank you, of course, Groovy Bean earlier. And just a great crowd tonight. Great questions. And Walter was just off the charts. BB, it's great to see you too. Modwiz, always good to have you and your questions. And Kate, of course, saying hello to Kate. And I think Najat is out there. Najat, terrific to see you. Doyle Wayne, thanks so much. Tessa Dick, fantastic. We will see everyone next week. And of course, Miss Olivia, it's up to you.
It's nachos all the way.
Nachos all the way, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Any special considerations there?
With peach salsa.
That's all. It sounds
as
incredible.
Fast as possible. It's 11 o'clock.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone. And, it's really kind of a special Sunday coming up. So thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Peach
salsa.
Oh, my God.